Pierre Alexei in Nassau in very, very light wind, just rocketing downwind, and they had a very different style. We saw Alexei was usually quite upright on the mast downwind. We saw him in the last downwind today here in Miami, more in the boat. But those guys have great speed no matter where they are.
Well, as our camera boat works its way down through the fleets, we're looking at some of the back markers, bow 79,
welcome to Miami,
Argentinian
welcome to
team,
Biscayne
Fabian
Bay,
McGowan,
welcome to the USA,
Ariel
and
Sene,
welcome to the 90th Bacardi Cup. Here it is, the cup itself, from Cuba, Havana, with the famous bat logo of Bacardi. In the sport of sailing, this really is on the bucket list of many, many sailors, and we've got some famous names like recently Robert Staniek, Fritjof Kleen, Lars Grael from Brazil, two-time winner, Mark Mendelblatt, Xavier Rohart from France. Going back in time a little bit, Hamish Pepper from New Zealand, Mark Reynolds, 7-time winner of the Cup, Ding Shoemaker, names like Etchells. It goes back in time to some of the great and the good. We're here to cover the 6 races, old school races, long 3-hour races, huge beats, huge runs, and it's going to be cool. We'll cover it with Virtual Eye and our America's Cup camera out there. But before we get into what's going on today, let's talk to some of the sailors about what this special trophy means to them.
Means joy, means glory, means the history of a traditional event, which is the Bacardi Cup, 90 years. So it's probably the major star class event except the Gold Star. So it's a great event. It's nice to be here in Miami, officially the capital of the star class.
In my opinion, it's the second most important trophy in the star class, just behind the Star Wars. We only be here trying to take it.
I think it's just an incredible experience to get out here and get sailing with these guys who have been super inspirational in getting me into the Star in the last 2 years.
Trophy means a lot to me. I've been sailing for this regatta probably almost 50 years. And it's probably, as I've said before, it's on everybody's bucket list. And, you know, it takes the very cream of the crop to win it, but I think that something that everybody worldwide, no matter what regatta we're in or whatever, this is one of the most meaningful regattas that the Star Class has.
It means past and future. That's very important. With big names on this cup, my name is there, and I really want to have it again on it. And it means also the future, because we combine everything here, the SSL, the Star Class, big guys, amateur, and we are doing everything to go forward for the future.
In Robert Staniek and me, we were the first German ever winning it, so it's a very special moment to stand next to it again, and it's great memories, and yeah, I tried to have it in my hand in this lifetime once again.
Well, here we are in the US Sailing Center. For just in a few minutes, we're going to see race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup. I'm here with the lovely Kathleen Tock, former US sailing team member. Kathleen, we're in for a crunchy race number 5.
Yeah, I think the sailors are thrilled that the wind came up, but wasn't looking very optimistic this morning. And you know, it was pretty grueling yesterday. It was light winds, and it's become hotter and hotter. And to have 2 days, very light winds waiting around is a little bit difficult. But the breeze has filled in nicely, I think a little more than expected, and we should have some happy faces out there.
Okay, well, race number 5 is going to happen in just a few minutes. Let's take a virtual fly out to the race course. And there we're over Miami and Biscayne Bay, just flying down towards the US Sailing Center and Coral Reef Yacht Club. There's the city as we move around with Virtual Eye. And then out we go to the race course. And you can see the live tracking information of the 70-plus boats, about 72 boats on the race course. And the names flying out, some of the boats going out to the course. We had a postponement ashore for a little while earlier today, but the sea breeze looks like it's kicking in, which is good news for us and for everyone watching at home and at work. There's the shot of the race committee. You can see a little cloudy cover, and here After 4 races, Mark Mendelblatt and Magnus Liljedahl are top of the leaderboard, 4 points ahead of Xavier Rohart and Pierre-Alexis Ponceau, and then Augie Diaz and Bruno Prada in that 3rd spot. Lars Grael, Sam Conchalvis very much in contention, as are Szabo and Nattucci, Melody Revkin, and Buckingham and Sperry, Charlie Buckingham with Austin Sperry. So that's how the racing looks at the moment. You can see the pink number there is a discard, so Mendelblatt and Liljedahl have a 50. Diaz and Prada an 11th, but look at Grael and Conchalves, all single figure digits, a 6, a 6, a 7 and a 1. They are discarding that 7 that could very well come into play by the end of the day on the overall leaderboard. And just below them, Szabo and Nattucci, they had gear damage in the first race, so that was a DNF, it did not finish, and so they are counting a 1st, an 11th and a 2nd. But they won't have the luxury of that 7th that Grael and Conchalves have. It's about consistency. Lars Grael was in here doing a race analysis, which we could show later on today, but he was analysing race number 4, and really it's all about consistent results. This is a classic fleet racing regatta, fleet racing championship. It's not all about the bullets, about the glory of winning a race. It's consistency, and I think good leaderboard.
Yeah, well, I think Grael definitely has sailed consistently throughout the event, but we saw him the last race yesterday right on the starting line. We've talked about, because it is such a big fleet, such a long event with only 1 race per day, that's somewhat you want to be a little bit conservative, and but being conservative doesn't always win you the race. It will get you a top 5 finish, top 10 finish. But we saw Grael with these very good finishes, winning yesterday, being a little more aggressive on the line, and that's what makes a difference. We said coming out yesterday he had to get a top 3 to kind of have a chance at winning this event, because he wasn't really dropping a big number. If you look at Mendelblatt and Liljedahl, they're dropping a 15. George Szabo is dropping a DNF, and so with that scorecard, if they can pull off 2 more top 10 finishes, I think we can see them on the podium at the end of this event.
Well, our PRO, our principal race officer, Carl Schellbach, as I'm reliably informed, that not Schellbach, as I've been calling him over the past 3 days, Schellbach. Good old Carl, you can see him there, middle of frame. He's keeping a weather eye and doing a fabulous job with his entire race officer team. He popped into our studio here, the US Sailing Center, big thumbs up this morning, and he's communicating with everybody and just telling us that he's relying on all the volunteers around him, and he asks us to give them a big thumbs up. So well done, race committee team. You're having a tough job today. We can see the postponement flag up there. Carl there with his radio and his weather sticks and his weather eye. We're in a slight postponement, but you can see that there is some breeze. So we are very soon going to be enjoying race number 5. Now, what we can do is show you the highlights from yesterday. There was some good racing out there. It was won by Lars Grael and Sam Conchalves. But here are some race highlights and some action from yesterday.
We are halfway through the Bacardi Cup. 3 races down, 3 more to go. So the sailors are setting up for some light air racing.
And away they go for the start of race number 4 of the Bacardi Cup. It's getting to be crunch time. Grael and Conchalves, no one to windward of them. So the Brazilians getting off to rather a nice start. A bird's eye view over Biscayne Bay and this beautiful scene of the Bacardi Cup. just working their way down, 2 times winner of the trophy. They had that lovely, lovely, lovely start. Really good upwind performance, and they're being chased by Szabo and Natucci. USA, bow 20, they've got a duck behind. They had a go, there's no room. So another victory for Lars Grael as he crosses the line with Sam Conchalves.
Race committee did right. They waited until the wind to pick up a little. So the race was light, but was fair.
Well, Lars Grael and Sam Conchalves, 2 times winner of the Bacardi Cup. Here he is. He's in contention. He could, as we noticed earlier, he's got single-digit numbers on his scoreline, a 6, 6, 7, and a 1. So he's discarding a 7th place at the moment. So he's 3rd overall going into race number 5, and we'll be watching very closely to see how he gets in. And he's good in light breeze, which we have right now, Kathleen.
Yeah, Lars is good in light breeze. He's got great speed. He's tactically smart. And I think where we really see him shine, actually, is on the downwinds. He has great speed downwind. We saw him lined up next to Mendelblatt yesterday and pulling ahead. As we've mentioned, all these guys at the top are good. All the conditions, that's how they get to the top. But one of the things that crew grown up kind of in the favelas of Rio, brought up into sailing in the Grail Project, which is a large project in Rio de Janeiro where they bring the young kids from some of the less wealthy neighborhoods into the sport of sailing. And he's one of those lucky kids who started when he was very young. He's been sailing with Lars since 2011, and he really is an integral part of that team. He's always working on the boat, and he can manage Lars. It's got to be hard to step into a boat at such a young age with such a legend. Lars has such a pedigree, an Olympic medalist, multiple champion in different classes, and here this young kid from Rio de Janeiro just steps in the boat with him. But he's learned so much, and Lars is definitely happy to be accompanied by such a strong, young, enthusiastic young man.
It's a cool story, isn't it? I mean, an unusual and very cool story in sailing. And there are quite a few attempts and moves to get youngsters into the sport in all disciplines. But just locally, there's a loaner program going on, which I heard about from John Chiarella, who's done 50 Bacardi Cups. And he's out there. He's one of the boats there. But John was just saying that they'd work quite hard to get people to loan boats so that youngsters can get out there and have a crack at it. And there are about 5 or 6 of them out there on this loaner program, borrowing boats and having a go and doing okay. So, you know, that's how sailing works. The older generation get the younger generation involved, and, you know, that's how it worked for me. Talking to Mark Mendelblatt, you know, he was earlier today. That's how it happened for him, and it gets passed on. And the more we encourage youngsters to get into it, however we do it. But fascinating to see how the Grails and the Grail Foundation, because there's Lars and Torben Grail, of course, and that's how they're doing it over there. These are the live shots. We're looking at the committee moving around. They're hunting for breeze, trying to set a fair and decent course. Carl Schellbach on the bow there. Captain Carl, off he goes in the good ship committee boat, looking for breeze. And 6.5 knots-ish on the racetrack from about 130. So we've had easterlies, and now it's kind of clocking down to more southeasterly at the moment.
Yeah, I think we'll see that with the sea breeze starting to fill in, we hope. The breeze shifting a little bit more towards the west, and that's a typical thing that happens here in Miami. With these light winds and a bigger city these days, as we mentioned yesterday, Miami isn't getting as much breeze as it has in the past. But if we're patient here, as the race committee's being, we should get some good racing off.
Well, talk about good racing and good racers. George Szabo, Edoardo Nattucci, the American-Italian duo in our frame right there with the lovely US flag. They are 4th overall at the moment, and their discard is race number 1, where they have to count a 72nd. Did not finish because they had trouble with their halyard, and we saw them turn round on our tracker and forlornly come back towards the club to haul out. So interesting now with that discard to see them up on the leaderboard in 4th with a 1st, an 11th and a 2nd. Very much ones to watch, because as we have discussed over the past few days, the wind is getting lighter from a heavy breezy start to the championship, and now the characters like George can come into their own. He's from San Diego, he's a very deft touch, very light helm, and he's good in the light breeze. Out on our TV boat on the racetrack, we can catch up with none other than famous sailing journalist Mr. Louis Habib and Jenny Tulloch, great sailor and commentator. Hi Louis, hi Jenny. We see that you're on the move.
Yeah, we are on the move, and it's a fantastic surprise to have this breeze this early. Jenny, we've just been talking about that. What's the breeze doing and why?
No, you can tell it's not just our hair moving because we're on the move. There is actually good, solid breeze out here. I mean, we probably have 8 knots at the top of the course. Maybe the lightest is 6 knots, but it looks solid completely all the way across the bay. I had, as you said, Carl Schellbach, the PRO of the class. I had him in a Facebook Live interview this morning, and he said at that time, you know, it was glassy. Like, we're talking flat calm the whole way across Biscayne Bay. And he said, but the clouds are up earlier than we expected, so we should see the sea breeze coming out. And we have a lot of clouds behind us, and we have a very strong, very solid sea breeze. Well, not very strong, but strong enough. We're happy with it, and it's out much earlier than we were expecting. We were thinking maybe 2 p.m. it would be coming in to be racing by 2:30, but no, we think we're going to get it off soon. The race committee's just said they need to move to a position where the breeze is more stable. So while we have plenty of breeze, perhaps it is still clicking around a little bit. It's not quite settled on its sea breeze direction, so we'll expect it to be about 1:35 when they start this racing.
Yeah, and you know, talking to Luca Medina a little bit earlier on, what Luca reckons is actually going to build. You know, his thoughts were that we're going to see, as the land heats up during the day, the breeze is going to increase in velocity, and then as it reaches its zenith, it'll be shifting to the right all day, is what he thinks. As the puffs come in, it'll be going to the right, and then at its zenith, when it's got as hot as it's going to get, it'll shift back to the left. So that was Luca Medina's thoughts before this. And he got it right yesterday, so maybe it's going to be the right that pays today, and then later on, maybe you know, in that last leg, it might be the left that pays. But yeah, Luca knows what he's talking about. Let's see if he's right. Back to you in the studio, Digby.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, Jenny. Great to see the boats moving around and some action going on. We're in a holding pattern postponement mode earlier on today, and the boats were ashore, and everyone, it was rather a nice sight, everyone having little coffees and chit-chats and catch-ups, and part of sailing, and I rather love it. I like a little postponement, you know, it's kind of a little, but then you go into kind of relax mode, and you sort of can get caught hopping on the back foot slightly when you have to go out and race and tune in. But it looks like we're going to be racing fairly soon out there. Race officer Carl Schellbach is moving the course and setting it all up, and Luca Modena, I call him Modena.
The accent in Italian is on the first syllable.
Okay, well, for once I'll get it right. Modena, something like that. Dear Luca is the coach to the reigning world star champions, Augie Diaz and Bruno Prado, and Luca's been out here for the previous week, tuning them into what's going on and tuning into the weather patterns. And as Louis mentioned there, as the thermal does it circling around and it rises up to the land. If it hits a breeze at the top, at the zenith, what a great word from Louis, at the very top of the thermal, and if it hits another breeze going the wrong direction, the opposite direction, it kind of kills the sea breeze. But Luca was explaining that no, that's all good. It's going to rise up to the top and it's going to meet and greet the breeze right up there and come circling back down and come into an easterly direction to get a good race underway. And that's the direction there on the racetrack. Long old course, again around 1.7 kilometers, 1.7 nautical miles, forgive me, from top to bottom. We don't know what course they're going to do. They favour the 5-leg course, the windward-leeward, up, down, and then finish upwind. So kind of 2.5 laps of the track. And there we see the live tracking shots. Everyone has a GPS tracker on board and they're all testing the racetrack, looking around, seeing which way is going to pay.
Yeah, for those of you who are relatively new to our sport or haven't been sailing here in Miami, the Bacardi Cup, we've mentioned many times, is a very special race. There's only one race per day and a very long race. Yesterday was about 10 miles long, and most sailing races last about an hour, but not the Bacardi. The tradition is a very long one race per day. And here in Biscayne Bay, it's also very interesting because they're sailing in very shallow waters. On average, Biscayne Bay is about 2 meters deep, maximum about 3 meters deep. So you can get a lot of this, what we call Miami chop, even with the slightest increase in breeze. And so right now it's not that windy, it's not that choppy out there. But when you have a big fleet of 70 plus boats out there on the race course, it creates its own chop. So also when the breeze does fill in, as we hope it will, Digby, you're going to see even more chop. But the Starboat with that beautiful water line and being a heavy boat just goes through the waves so well. And it's just a pleasure to sail the Starboat on Biscayne Bay.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do with the SSL, the Star Sailors League, is to help analyse the racing and help understand what's going on out there. And what better way to do that than to invite the winner of the race in and ask them to talk us through how that race went and to use the wonderful resources from Virtual Eye to help us understand. So, after the race yesterday, we asked Lars Grael into our little commentary position here, and here is how he analysed race number 4. Well, we're going to carry on our series of analysis of the Bacardi Cup, and here with us in our commentary position, our studio at the US Sailing Centre, is none other than Mr. Lars Grael, 2 times winner of the Bacardi Cup. Thanks for coming along, Lars. We're going to have a look at race number 4, and we had several attempts to get this underway.
That's true.
Today, a lot of delays, a lot of postponements, and I thought Virtual Eye will just have a look at the 3rd attempt of the poor race committee trying to get you all underway. You're all champing at the bit, and let's roll it and have a little look. So here we are. We're a few 40 seconds. We're speeding up a little bit here. Yeah. We will see where you are in a moment, but everyone's pushing.
I was close to the race committee. Here you can say 12 seconds before one boat has crossed the line and 3 around here. So middle of the starting line, there was a belly for the outside.
And do you think some of these guys in the middle were hoping to get away with it a little bit by being blanketed either side by sails so that the race committee wouldn't be able to see them?
Sometimes the middle of the starting line, you believe you're covered for both ends. But this time what happened, that the both ends were under the line or on the limits. So the middle was on the outside, they could see. And that's probably what happened.
Let's replay the successful start. This is the actual start of race number 4, and we can cue you up and see where you are. You're right there in that little bunch.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so it looks to me like you've got some nice clean air to windward of you, and a couple of people, including Rohart.
Yeah, it was very important for us to clean the boat that was on our leeward. That boat started slightly better than we did. So we were struggling to try to keep our windward. Once we could kill that boat, we had free spot to cross to the left.
Okay, and what's your game plan?
We gained some windward. The idea was to start on the race committee and go to the left, because looking the other race courses seems to be like an oval circuit. Formula Indy circuit, people were going left upwind and coming on the same direction downwind because of wind strengths.
Okay, and here you are carving up into the middle of the track. Roja, Ponceau getting into a little trouble. They went right, and now they're coming and following you.
Sure.
And the early race leaders out here on the left.
That's correct. But then getting close of the left corner, the wind had a small shift to the right. So I was in the middle. I gained some positions against the people that started on the pin, going directly on the left corner.
Was that if we slow right down towards the top mark, that middle position, was that a conscious game plan before the start?
Yes, middle left was our idea. Start on the race committee, cross, and play on the middle left. And it is about the same George Zabel has done.
Yeah.
He started more on the middle of the starting line. He went left. He crossed us very close behind. Then he took a small puff from the right, crossed us. We were second at that time. So then we could catch him back on the upwind mark.
Round the upwind mark, there you are in the lead, and a few boats behind you. Roja, Ponceau, interesting.
Yes.
I just mentioned them.
And George Zabel on the second position.
George right behind you, first
That's
and
correct.
second. And around you go. And almost this is how you end up at the finish of the race. You know, once you get up to that top mark in a huge fleet like this, you know, we talk about the rich getting richer.
Yes.
And
it's a kind of wild capitalism.
Okay, and away you go. And we're going to whiz down to the bottom a little bit. Any thoughts? You're pretty
downwind. And we were trying to protect George Zabel all the time. And as you said, once you were free ahead, all the tactics gets easier because you are sailing free with no shade. So there's a tendency to open the gap to the pack with a big group of sailors.
So you both jibe at the same time. You are covering George, staying between Zabel Natucci and the gate, the bottom mark.
That's correct.
Okay, classic tactics in fleet racing. And you managed to pull out quite a more lead here. You extended your lead. And we know George Zabel is fast downwind. So what have you got in your back pocket, you know, to go even faster than George?
I think we have powerful sails, and the way we sail in downwind, in medium light wind, we used to have good boat speed as we had like the World Championship in Buenos Aires. So it's a condition that we normally perform good, and that time we were successful.
Now, I was predicting you to go around this mark, this gate here,
Yes.
and not this one. But here you come and refute me, and you decide to go for this one. Why was that?
Because for the position I was before, I thought that was a closer mark to round. But as soon George rounded the other side, we tacked it before to try to protect the left.
But doesn't that mean you have to weave through all this lot here?
That was a mistake. We had lots of shade from the people coming on downwind.
And there George is in free as a bird.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Then he was able to come back and later on to round the mark together with us.
Because he caught right up almost to your heel, and he had to duck you around that top mark. So it was interesting because we're commentating, you know, as all this is going on and trying to predict what you do, and then you kind of do something else.
So
and,
if you see next time, I haven't done the same mistake. I did the other mark. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that time we realized that we lost lots of field for George Zabel.
I'm going to ask Paul just to speed this one up to the top mark, and we'll just see how Zabel out here to your left as you look up. There he coming in underneath you. You cover him a little bit, and you're doing this little jewel up here, upwind.
And then the mistake was close to the upwind mark. We tacked to the left, and we should have covered him, giving shade. But I was trying to be like more gentle. We tackled on his leeward, and we kept going left, so he came back.
Okay, so it almost
I
got
could be
America's
I
Cup
could be
here.
more aggressive and attack in front of him. I attacked on his line, was a little bit lured, and he was getting more pressure coming from the left, so he always catches us back.
I'm going to ask Paul to do something a little strange here, and just rewind, if you would. Paul from Virtual Eye is there running the controls. Just go back in time a little bit to that moment just before you decide to do that tack. It's quite interesting what you say there. It's illustrative of us, because when we were commentating live, we thought that's exactly what you had done, tack on him.
That was probably the mistake. I was coming on starboard, so I should have crossed him and tacked right in front of him, giving him shade. But I was trying to be like gentle, and didn't work, because I gave him the left spot, and the left puffs came from left. He had more pressure and better angle approaching to the windward mark.
So you should have just carried on, tack on him, give him your exhaust.
10 more seconds I should have gone.
Oh, that's interesting.
I tacked before, and that was probably a mistake. The 26 meters gap was getting shorter and shorter.
Almost to the extent, as we speed up a little bit towards the top, where he nearly got inside you.
Nearly. For a detail, he could have gone and tacked on our leeward, rounding the marking on the first.
So it's great having you in here straight after the race to analyse this and talk us through it a little bit. Fascinating. So once you get up to the top, you just maintain your lead. George has to do a little duck. He's not in there close enough, and that's it, really. That's
correct.
More or less the end of the race. Once you're out on front, as we were mentioning, the rich get richer. You're out in your own clean air, doing your own thing, and it's happy days for the leaders of the race. Just give us a quick impression about racing out there and the kind of mental game that's going on.
That's correct. The mental game, of course, because you're sailing against famous sailors, heroes, people with gold stars, silver stars. So they're all prepared to win. So the mental pressure, of course, it happens. So like sailing with George Zabel, sometimes he was trying to pointing high on downwind, pushing us to luff, sometimes trying to get inside, to win the inside jibe for the mark. So we had to have a balance, concentrate, and try to do the best boat speed as possible.
Anything else you would like to add?
No, I think it was interesting because it was a day that was difficult to make a race. Wind was light. Race committee did a correct postponement. At the end, we had a fair race. Tomorrow, it's going to be even more difficult. The wind prediction is to be even lighter. So they will probably going to postpone on shore, wait the wind conditions to be fair enough, and make a race probably at the end of afternoon, I guess.
Well, Lars, thank you very much for joining us in of the Star Class, 2 times winner of the Bacardi Cup with Sam Conchalves. Thank you very much, and good luck for the next 2 races. You're in contention. You're in sight of another Bacardi Cup.
I hope I have a chance to come here, because if we come here, it's because we won a race.
Okay. We will see you again.
We hope.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed that.
I think he did as well.
Yeah, interesting. And what better to kind of crunch and analyse a race using the wonderful virtual eye than to get the winner in and get him to go. Xavier did a race earlier for us, race number 1, and you can see those if you go to the Facebook, the SSL Facebook page. There is Xavier's race analysis there as well, and we'll build up this portfolio. And the whole point is that if you're racing, you know, dinghies, any kind of dinghy or keelboat or big boat in fleet racing format, these race analysis will give you some tips to improve.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool for the sailors themselves. Even Lars, they're out there on this race course with almost 2 nautical mile beats, and they're like, what's happening on the other side of the race course? You can't see that far. So I think if they can come back and see it played out on the computer, on the television screen in front of them, it answers a lot of questions.
Well, Here's our live shot of the race committee boat at the moment, under postponement, but not for long.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
AP down. So we will have 1 minute to the 5-minute gun, the warning signal. That is Faye, one of the volunteers on the race committee boat, who's very kindly taken a radio just for us to let us know the countdowns, and we're really enjoying that, so thank you very much, Faye. Coming up to 5 minutes to the start of race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup, and there's breeze out on the water. We can very quickly tune in with Louis. Louis is standing on the deck of our TV cat there, 7.7 knots, Louis.
Yeah, a fantastic sight, Digby, and nice to be out here a little bit earlier than anticipated. Looking up the racetrack, it looks pretty even breeze all the way up. But on the Luca Medina money is to go right here. We'll be interested to see if people do. And I would say the top gate is slightly over to the left. So maybe they've taken that and put in a little bit of a bias to that way. And I'm seeing it with my naked eye. I have got my glasses on, but I wouldn't totally take that as read. But yeah, fantastic sight here, and the penultimate race of the Bacardi Cup, really looking forward to a cracking start. There's a lot of boats up at the pin end, and I can hear, you probably hear over the radio, this is going to be a black flag start. So no monkey business, straight at it. And the PRO has stamped their authority on this early on. And here goes the black flag.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There you go. And there's a lot of boats up at the pin end, Digby. I can't see right the way round the corner here, the back of the boat. But I can't see any gold stars down here, Digby. I think it's going to be who's going to be king of the pin. Back to you in the studio.
Okay, right now we're looking at Henning Voigt from Germany, a longtime sailor of the Star, and his father actually was a coach of Hagen at the Olympics in Seoul.
And then Charlie Buckingham, Austin Sperry, the Americans. Charlie, laser sailor, represented the USA in Rio at the Rio Games, and getting into the Star. I'm really keen, really enjoying it. Austin, experienced crew, and Austin very kindly came up this morning and just said, it's great racing out there, and he was watching some replays and enjoying the work of the SSL. Interesting 3 minutes to go, and if Luca Modena is saying that the right is going to pay, that's unusual, because so far in just about every race the leaders have come out of the left-hand side of the track, but Luca is the coach of the reigning world champs, and he's doing an amazing job, and he's actually predicted every single day bang on. So I'm trusting Luca's judgment here, and we're looking at Austin Sperry, crewman, with Charlie Buckingham. We've got a camera on board with these guys, a live shot, so we'll follow these youngsters around the track and see how they get on. They were black flagged yesterday over the line and flicked out of the third attempt to get race number 4 underway, and finally they got race number 4 on the 4th attempt, but unfortunately Charlie and Austin had to sit that one out, and Charlie in fact came into our commentary position at the US Sailing Centre and chipped in towards the end of the race, which was quite cool and which we rather enjoyed.
Now, I know they started about 2/3 of the way down the line. They thought they were going to be covered. There's such a big fleet, and usually if people are pushing the line, all the boats to win will recover you, but actually there was a pack of about 3 boats, including Jack Jennings and Frida Clean, who were right next to them, and the juries on the race committee boat saw them, and they thought they were covered. Very disappointing when they found out and had to come in.
Well, that's life, pushing the line super hard, and big split, far less boats at the committee boat end today. Over the past few days, we've seen the committee boat end really busy with boats, but as Louis says, it's the pin is favoured at the moment. Everybody wanting that pin end right now. And we can just dial in very quickly with Louis. You're right, everyone's going for the pin, Louis.
I think the only team that's done well so far in the race that's down this end is Anisov and Cesar. But yeah, there's no way I can see with the naked eye what's going on that pin end. We're a good 400 or 500 metres away, so we're a long way from the action here, and we're going to take off after the boats when they go. Looking up the track, the breeze is looking pretty consistent, I have to say. My feeling is maybe the left, you've got the land coming into play up there. It's actually called Biscayne Keys, and maybe they'll get a bit of lifting pressure on the left-hand side. But Luca Medina, he's not often wrong. He'd have been over on the right-hand side. He'd have been virtually on his own, I reckon. But we are right into the vinegar strokes here, Digby. And I can still see the orange flag at the other end. So everybody's behind the line at the moment.
9,
but it's a massive
8,
bunch up
7,
at the pin end.
6,
Absolutely huge.
5,
Thanks, Louis.
80% of the
3,
fleet.
2, 1, mark.
Bang, and off they go for the start of race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup. Black flag in action. Looks like nobody was over, so we were into a clean start, and away they go. Pin end hugely favoured for race number 5. It's a turnaround in the weather.
Yeah, it was no surprise to see all the boats down there. Traditionally, that side has been favored, but also I think the wind is a little bit shiftier today. They're going to have more options. They're going that direction. Well, I was saying, sorry.
We can virtually fly, that's all right, Kathleen, no problem. We can virtually fly over the fleet towards the pin end, and we fire up some names, and suddenly we'll start to see the runners, the top 10 runners and riders overall. They are all down there. There's Vasella, there's Vitrinta, there's Doyle and Infeliz in that front row, and Rauch and Schoenberger in there as we fly virtually towards the pin end. Most boats, we start to see some of the gold stars, the World Championship winners with their gold stars on the sail, and they're all down there. There, suddenly now we see Rohart and Ponceau tacking out onto starboard in a second row start. Another not brilliant start for the Frenchman. Buckingham and Sperry looking absolutely superb on that line there, next to Diaz and Prada. So the world champs, reigning world champs, Jorge Diaz, Bruno Prada, off to a firing start, poking their nose ahead, and a long old line, and the early indication, the mathematical leaders all out on the left-hand side of the track.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see Augie down the pin. He says he likes to start down at the pin. What I am surprised at is on a black flag start that he actually was right there on the line. That's something he's struggled with. I know Bruna sometimes wants him to be more aggressive, and as we've talked, you can't really put your nose out there when it's a black flag. But when you are down at the pin, you have a very good sight of the other end of the line and can be pretty exact. As long as no one else is pushing you over, you can probably judge your start the best there.
Well, Bow 41, Brian and Eric Ledbetter poking out onto port and getting some clean air, a big curve within the fleets. Virtual Eye just now was giving us a very, very interesting view. You can just see the gap to the bottom of the screen of the guys, Lippincott and Firth, Gullen and Martin, and how far behind that lead line they are. So the big names all firing out to the left-hand side of the track. The pin end absolutely favoured for the start of race number 5.
You can see Lippincott and Firth are all the way on the right-hand side, and they're new to this fleet. They don't want to go and engage in too many boats further down the line, but I was surprised to see Arthur Anisoff and Dave Cesar over there on the right-hand side. They've been in the top 15, sailing very well in this event, and maybe they just had a bad start and couldn't get a clear lane.
Well, at the bottom of our virtual eye, you can see McDonald and von Schwartz heading back, and perhaps they were black flag, I'm not sure. Louis may be able to update it. We think they were black flags, so that's game over for von Schwartz, who did such an amazing job in race number 3. They had the best start up to the top mark, and they're going to be fairly gutted to be going home early.
Yeah, Digby, we can hear the race committee calling out several numbers. I couldn't tell you who they are straight off the top of my head, but I think there's going to be some very disappointed people at the end of this beat, because it's more than one number that was called out. So some of the guys racing out there at the moment are going to get the Dear John letter when they get to the top mark and get flicked on that black flag rule.
Louis, we are seeing Diaz and Prada turn back, which is a real shock. Seb from the SSL has just come up and handed us a little note. Black flag boats, Diaz and Prada. Augie Diaz, Bruno Prada, reigning world champs. They are out. Who else is out?
Got Manfred Kanter is also out, as we mentioned. That's Kanter right there, Canada 8094, and Andrew McDonald and John Van Schwartz. So that's 2 teams in the top 15 who are going home early today.
So 3 boats in all, as far as we know from the latest info from the race officers out there. I thought it was clean, but we'll play a virtual replay in just a moment of that start. But really the big news so far in race number 5 is Diaz and Prada out of this race, and they were 3rd going into today. They've had worst results so far is an 11th, so they have got an 11th, a 3rd, a 6th and a 3rd, fairly consistent, but this will be their discard now, and you can just see how forlorn and disappointed they are with this.
Yeah, they're talking to their coach there in the blue shirt, Loko Modena, who we've been talking about for a long time. As I said, I was very surprised to see Augie punch there. I can imagine that Bruno's going, go, 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 go. Also, it could have been just another boat that just pushed them up a little bit over the line. It's hard to accelerate these heavy boats and get them over the line full speed.
Remonstrating with coach and not happy at all. Dear Augie Diaz hasn't won the Bacardi Cup. He's one of the best star sailors in the world, reigning world champ, and he is not happy at all with that black flag start. Bruno Prada, more philosophical in the front of the boat. It is what it is, and fair enough. Back they go.
They're only carrying an 11th as their worst race. That's still a great scoreline that they had. They can actually afford to have this result or non-result, but it will be hard to get them on top of the podium with this race.
Meanwhile, some 70 boats continuing with race number 5, the penultimate race in the Bacardi Cup. Lawrence and Coleman poking their nose out in the lead, just ahead of Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry. 7 meters behind, there's Vasella and Trinta, Doyle, Infeliz, Mendelblatt and Lil Charles. That dangerous combo, top of the leaderboard going into the day. Now in 5th, beginning to get a grip of this championship. As we move down the leaderboard, I am not seeing any French flags in that top 20. So where is Rohart and Ponceau second on the leaderboard? In the middle of that pack, to the left of our screen on Virtual Eye, we can see the Frenchmen, and they are well behind the lead line.
Yeah,
here we go, a little drone shot, beautiful overhead pictures live from the racetrack. Oh, that's a magic shot.
Yeah, those 2 boats have an excellent lane right there. And I think that might have been Xavier's problem. I think after the start, he couldn't hold his lane, probably had to tack off onto port. And that got him a little bit towards the middle of the pack. And in the middle of the pack, it's harder to find lanes. There's our drone flying. A great tool for sailors to use to look at sail shape, analyze the fleet. It's a little bit tricky to fly it over the water as well.
Well, so we've discovered.
Drone down.
Okay, so our drone was flying over one of the Canadian boats heading to the right-hand side of the racetrack. Our camera boat also heading up the right-hand side of the track. All the leaders, Lawrence and Coleman, Buckingham, Sperry, Vasella, Trinta, Mendelblatt and Lil Charles. As far as I can tell on Virtual Eye, they are all on the left-hand side of the track. And a little A-class, it's rather nice. We are part of Miami Sailing Week, and if you see, if Adam pans right just a tiny bit, we can see some of the other boats competing in Miami Racing Week. There's an A-class catamaran, beautiful solo cat, and they're out there, that guys enjoying the view of a great star race at the moment.
Okay, in the background there you see Biscayne Bay. It's a causeway that goes out to very Long Island. And actually our bay here is pretty much surrounded by land on almost all sides of the race course, and that's what makes for such shifty racing in Biscayne Bay.
Well, the bird's eye view of Virtual Eye and our drone telling us that all the leaders are far out to the left of the track, furthest away from our camera and drone, but it's a beautiful shot. I love this high angle down onto the race boats, and right there looking at 68, Prada and Rushman ploughing their way upwind. Back with Virtual, another huge spread across the course. It's 1.7 nautical miles from bottom to top. We're doing 5 legs, as in 2 laps plus upwind finish, so they go up, down, and then they do another upwind leg to finish at the top. It's been favoured by the race committee here at the Bacardi Cup. We're in for about a 2.5 hour race here, a long, old school, mega drag race to the top of the mark. We're in the 90th Bacardi Cup. Really cool to get back to some traditional style of sailing, and it's all about lanes, about boat speed, about not getting trapped behind in dirty air by other guys. So an awful lot going on board as they plough their way up towards the top.
Okay, and we're just talking about lanes, and it's been very difficult the previous days to hold your lane because people would go off to one side or another for a very, very long time. But what we're seeing today on the tracker is that you have a lot of boats that are not banging over to one side. There's a lot more shifts going on, I think, on the race course than on previous days. And we could see that just prior to the start with the changes in the compass headings of the race committee. So my guess is it's going to be no standard script to winning today. In previous days, the left has been favored, but a little bit different on the racetrack.
Canadians Rob Cullen, Dave Martin just tacking back onto starboard tack to engage the middle of the racetrack. Loué Habib on the water there. We haven't heard from you a little while. We're seeing some wonderful drone shots. We're looking at the Canadians at the moment, Cullen and Martin. But Loué, really, it's all going on the left-hand side of the course.
Yeah, Digby, just to tell you what an amazing piece of kit we've got on this boat, the Fleur camera. We're over a mile away from those boats, so they're just white dots on the horizon from here. But I did notice over here we've got Brian and Eric Ledbetter. That's a father and son combination. And when they tacked over, I saw the dad reach for the looked like the head sail sheet. And his son slapped his hand. He literally said, "Get off it, Dad. That's my job." And they're obviously pumped up on board. And it was a nice little moment there. So saying, "Dad, get off my sheet. That's mine." But Digby, we're a mile away from that. So very difficult to tell you anything about what's going on over there. But beautiful sailing here, really crisp. Probably about 10 knots of breeze. Just a wonderful day to be out in the bay here. But as you say, there's a massive separation with a vast majority of the fleet over on the left-hand side. As they start to move into the middle, I guess it'll become more apparent for the naked eye here. But you've got it all on virtual. You can tell down to the metre. I couldn't even tell you what the name of those boats are over there.
So, Loué, Buckingham and Sperry have the lead just ahead of Lawrence and Coleman. Mendelblatt and Lil Jarl are in the mix over there, as are Szabo and Natucci. So in that little group that we're looking, as Adam, our cameraman, is zooming in about a kilometre away across the course, right on the end of his lens there, with our huge gyro lens, we're looking at Buckingham, Sperry, Lawrence, Coleman, Szabo, Natucci, Mendelblatt and Lil Jarl in that little clump of leaders.
And right there, bow 46, we have Dr. Hubert Merkelbach sailing with #1 ranked crew, Sergio Lambertini. They've been up here in our fleet all week, but really haven't had a top 5 finish yet, so we're hoping that they can maintain this position right now.
And we're seeing Eric Doyle, Payson, Infelice, bow 23 with a gold star, doing a beautiful job in some clear air. So a cracking start for those guys.
Okay, Also there we have Peter Vasella sailing with Phil Trinter. Phil has won this event himself as a top crew in the class, America's Cup sailor. And those two also have been here all winter training. They won the Midwinter Championships recently.
Well, our camera boat is steaming its way up the racetrack to make sure they're in a good spot for the top mark, hence the shifting perspective as we see Miami fly by in the background. It's pretty cool. It's like Miami Vice, this one. And away we go. Now, Chris, I wonder if we could replay the start in virtual eye. And we'll have a look at that black flag scenario, which really could have a huge effect on the overall leaderboard by the end of tomorrow. I think Augie Diaz and Bruno Prada, you could just see Augie so fired up. He's normally calm, collected, but you could see him remonstrating with his coach earlier, and really that's a disaster for them today, because they are going to have to count that. But they do have so far an 11th, a 3rd, a 6th and a 3rd. So an 11th is not the worst discard in the world. Let's have a virtual eye replay of that start. And we're almost 2 minutes into it. We flagged up Diaz and Prada and McDonald and Schwartz, two of the boats who were over the line. Was Cantor and Willem were over as well. So these are the 3 boats who were black flagged. Diaz and Prada, under a minute to go, almost on the pin. McDonald and von Schwartz. Oh, and it looks like Diaz and Prada were well over before the start. So something quite serious going on with Diaz. If we just stop it right there, Cantor and William in the middle, McDonald and von Schwartz also. So the race committee has eyes at both the committee boat end and the pin end, taking down numbers, and they're taking no prisoners today, because yesterday we had 4 attempts to get race number 4 underway, and you can just see Diaz and Prada with our little slight glitch in virtual, and they were spotted and black flagged, much to their disappointment. But you can just see, really, it tells us that they are gunning, they are champing at the bit to get off the line at full speed on the very second of the gun. So they could have been about a second ahead.
Well, you know, it's going to make it harder for them to start tomorrow. They're probably going to be a little gun shy because the race committee's been choosing to start with a black flag. My guess is we'll start the race tomorrow with a black flag. And after you have an over early like that, it's really hard to convince yourself to get back on the line. But Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry, the same thing happened to them yesterday, and here they are winning the race with a great
Well,
start.
bow 30, Charlie Buckingham, Austin Sperry, with a bit of Jenny, I think, in our camera shot. There we go. They've got a clear, I think they've got a clear lane in that position there, because they are nearly top of the leaderboard of race number 5. Austin, the crewman, Charlie, the Olympic laser sailor for the USA, Charlie there on the helm. Austin droop hiking over with some decent breeze. Buckingham and Sperry top of the leaderboard, just 2 meters ahead of Vasella and Trinta. Doyle and Feliz in the mix, as well as Lawrence and Coleman. So we are looking at the race leaders, and on board with Charlie there. Charlie, you can see, helming away. It's not his first discipline, star sailing, by any means, but here he is, a laser sailor, jumping on to the starboat, really fired up. He's got one of the best crews, one of the best American crews around. Good old Austin Sperry, teaching Charlie how these boats work and how the technique and tuning works. And they've come out here in race number 5, firing off that start line, showing a clean pair of heels to several Olympic and world champions behind them.
Well, they're both Olympians themselves, a bit younger than some of the other competitors out here. And they come from a family of star sailors. Austin's father was a star sailor. Charlie's father's out here today. And so they've been hearing about stars their whole lives. They've been in the community. And I think Charlie said yesterday that for the last 3 years, he hadn't actually even stepped in any other boat but a laser. And he's just so thrilled to get into the star class, learn the more technical aspects of sailing, adjusting the rig. The laser is a rather simple boat. And then to be on a boat with an Olympic crew like Austin Sperry, he's just learning that much more. So it's a great thing for single-handed sailors to get into a double-handed or triple-handed boat to improve their tactics and just learn something, because everybody has a little more experience than you in some aspect of sailing.
Well, just look at that bow shot. We're looking down the barrel of these guys as they head up to the top mark. Charlie there and Austin right next to George Szabo, Eduardo Nattucci in that little clump to picture right. We've got Szabo and Nattucci, the American-Italian duo, but Charlie Buckingham, I think he was 11th at the Rio Olympics. That was his result there, and he's fully campaigning again for Tokyo. He popped into our studio yesterday, having been black flagged, and was giving us a little update as to what he was up to, but he's fully back into Olympic campaigning, which is going to be a full-on, full-time job for the next 3 years, and we wish him good luck in Tokyo. But right now, he's in the Bacardi Cup and doing a fantastic job in race number 5, right next to, who have we got right
George
next to him?
Szabo is right next to him, the gold star. And the Italian Pacciola, I believe, is just above him to windward, followed by Canadian Jerry Wendt sailing with Brian Milne. So a nice lineup here, but I guess the guys probably to lure Charlie and George and have a little bit more forward boat speed.
Well, Austin looking behind, seeing what sort of damage they can do to the people behind with their airflow. They are in a position now to pour their exhaust, their exhausted air, their turbulent airflow onto some of the guys behind them. Falciola and Palosci, bow 58, they're going to be suffering a little bit from the two boats directly ahead of them. Szabo and Nattucci maybe getting a bit of turbulent effect from Buckingham and Sperry. I would say definitely they will be getting turbulence there. Doug Smith, Brian Hamani, they're in 18, they're in that little clump there. So a sweet little drag race going up on the left-hand side of the track. They've all tacked back into the middle of the course, and we're seeing Brian O'Mahony there with leaning out on bow 18. He's got his weed stick. He's doing a bit of cleaning, getting some of the dirt and drift and weed off his keel, and of course they can do this much easier upwind than downwind, and so this is kind of a bit of a routine that they'll do in the bay, and I think we were seeing Austin Sperry doing something similar there. So just an interesting foible of the Star Club. You don't see them do that too much in other small keel boats, but particularly with a Star, that little weed stick on the go.
Well, there's a few places in the world where the Star sailors use their weed sticks. One is here in Miami, and the other is in San Diego, where you have kelp much bigger. And it is something they actually practice, because you have to just keep steering the boat. And if you get weed on your rudder, that's even worse. Well, that's a nice position. He's getting his weight out. The further the crews can get their weight out, put their hands over their head, helps to flatten out the boat, give them a little more leverage, makes the boat go a little bit faster. But these are some big guys, so when they get their weight out like that, big heads, it actually makes a difference.
And arms. Exhausting though on a long leg. They'll be on that tack for a good solid 10 minutes. And you know, that's really hard work to keep that position, to be, you know, straining in that position and looking ahead. That's going to be hard work. There we see the top mark and the little spreader mark. Doyle, Infeliz in a marvellous position with Vasella and Trinta, Buckingham and Sperry, and Dr. Hubert Merkelbach with Sergio Lambertenghi in that mix, as are Szabo and Nattucci and McCausland and Cheer. So they looks like a bit of a wind shift, actually, Kathleen, just looking at the mathematics and how far above they have gone that lane line.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that exactly this far in the race. I expected to see more shifts going on. Just the way the boats were setting up in this upwind leg, we didn't have the standard follow the leader to the left. You see a lot more people in the middle of the course, whether they could get a lane, but also we've seen Xavier Rohart somehow got pushed to the middle of the course. He's not on our top 20 up. He just popped into 19th position. He somehow wasn't in the left-hand side, even though it looked like he wanted to go there after the start. And also, we're not seeing Ivan Melleby, the Norwegian, sailing with Josh Revkin.
15th.
Okay, so also, but they're not over there on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Okay, here, the first windward mark.
Doyle and Infeliz, around they go. That's a great victory for them to get in there, just followed by Merkelbach and Lambertengi.
Oh, and just squeezing into
hello.
leeward.
That was cheeky.
Peter Vasella and Phil Trinter. Nice job, guys.
Yeah, just squeezing around there. De Maison and Lopez in that mix.
Okay, John McCausland, former world champion, sailing with Roger Cheer.
And Anasov and Caesar also around. So that's the top 5-6 getting around on lap number 1. And really, for these guys, this is a mini victory on its own.
Okay, but you know who we haven't seen yet? We have not seen Lars Grell. He's kind of been off our radar screen in this beat. So another one of the top guys who's not in the top right now, and that could make a big difference if he's not able to pull his way up through the fleet. Oh, maybe that's Lars running right now. Okay.
Okay, super tight as the Longarellas go through. Zebo, Natucci, and then Grail and Conchalves in our shot. 12th around the top mark.
Marc Mendelet falling behind Grell. And there are the Frenchmen, Xavier Rohart and Pierre-Alexis. Not having a bad race.
Still in touch.
Okay, Austin. It's got the pole out. Setting it up. And again, as we mentioned many times, there is no spinnaker on a starboat. They have a whisker pull. It gets jibed similar to the way you would jibe a spinnaker pull. And it's interesting if you've never sailed this boat before. It seems a little awkward, but the angles downwind, you can still sail fairly low downwind with the whisker pull.
Charlie Buckingham, hand on the big main sheet, just easing
now we talk
it.
about big main sheet. That is over 70 feet of main sheet that they're pumping there. But the boats downwind they're light. You can move them almost like a dinghy, even though they're a very heavy keel boat. They respond like a dinghy, and I think that's one of the attractions for a laser sailor like Charlie.
It's kind of interesting. Charlie was just pulling his main sheet in just to avoid bashing into somebody coming upwind. And there's some breeze out here because water is coming over the decks and a little bit of wave, so we'll see how well Charlie gets into the rhythm of sailing this star downwind. Charlie, the Olympic laser representative in Rio for the USA, so he's a laser sailor, laser specialist, single-handed boat, a lot less tweaking and tuning on the laser, but it's still phenomenally hard to sail that laser well, as I know. But these boats, there's a lot more string in them, a lot more adjustments, and Charlie getting to grips with it rather well.
Well, you can see there in the screen, just in that shot, they were really to windward with quite a few boats, and having had the opportunity to round in the front pack, it looks like they went a little bit higher, and that's kind of a mistake that people new to a boat might do. It feels better to sail higher. Also, if you're one of the first boats around, you want to go and create distance, and you can do that by going forward. But I would be a little bit worried that they were sailing a little bit too high of an angle. And as we mentioned before, you want to sail the most direct angle to the mark, so trying to sail low, but also keeping your speed up. But I noticed right there that some other boats had gotten to lure to them.
Well, looking at virtual, Jack Jennings and Fritjof clean. Fritjof, Frieda, the German, he's the defending champion of the Bacardi Cup, sailing with Jack Jennings just about to go around that top mark. And to use a cruel sailing expression, down the pan a little bit in this race. He's not going to be too happy with that because they were black flagged yesterday. We had the pleasure of seeing Frieda join us in the studio, but he's not going to be happy because really they wanted to get out and do a particularly good job in race number 5.
Yeah, I think they were a team that we expected very good things of in this event. They put some time into the boat this winter in Miami and had good results. They were getting the boat prepared early. They've done a lot of sailing. So yesterday was very disappointing, and this is a bit surprising to see them back this far in the fleet. But we saw them going off to the left-hand side on that first beat, quite far to the left, to the right. And I'm not sure why they did that. Maybe Frieda saw some wind over there, but it wasn't an optimal place to get them in the front of the pack.
And there's my good friend Bob Lippincott there, just in 53rd, the youngster. 24 with his 21-year-old crewman, and they're on a loaner boat having their first crack at the Bacardi Cup. Great to see some youngsters having a go out here. Well, our camera boat is going to make its way down the race course to catch up with the leaders. They'll pick out some of the runners and riders as they move away, but virtually we can move our way with this little patch there. That's a beautiful position for George Szabo and Edoardo Natucci heading downwind, and Zanetti and Struby there, Londgren and Toyama, the Japanese crewmen, Rohard and Ponceau hanging on in that little front, the second group I would say, but they're still in contention in this race, mathematically 15th or 16th. I think we may have lost one of the trackers. I'm not sure. We'll find out in a moment.
Okay, we're looking at Ivan Melleby of Norway sailing with Josh Repkin. Josh is one of the top young crews, and he's currently ranked 4th in the SSL ranking. He's been top in so many regattas in the last years. No matter what what skipper he's sailing with, you usually see him on the podium. So if he's with Ivan or Peter Vasella, anyone, he's up there in the top 3. He spent a lot of time in the boat, and his father's out there racing with him today.
Josh Repkin, crewman, with Ivan Melleby, the Norwegian. And Ivan with that distinctive hunched look, just really focused. He's looking ahead and looking up at the sail, seeing how the telltales are flying. Obviously no spinnaker, as you mentioned, Kathleen, so they are using the vast mainsail and their jib as spinnakers to push the boat downwind. Josh on the foredeck.
If you watch Josh's feet, he's actually, his leeward foot, the foot, his left-hand foot here, is actually just pushing every so often down on the deck, and that helps to the boat to roll a little bit more naturally. And Melleby's not actually pumping the main so much. When we've seen, for example, Lars Grell going downwind, he's more aggressive with pumping the main. It is light out here today, and there's a bit of chop, so sometimes it's a little difficult in the light air with the chop to pump the main and have that be an efficient gesture. But definitely Melleby is a lot more calmer and smoother with, I think, the rocking motion coming from the crew, Josh Repkin.
Well, okay, those guys earlier today, they started in 6th overall. Their scoreline was a 3rd, 13th, 5th and 10th. Not bad going at all. Right now they're in about 19th, so this is their worst result so far, but there's a lot of racing left in race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup. Here's George Szabo with Edoardo Natucci. Edoardo, the Italian crew, he is top of the rankings in the Star Sailors League, the crew rankings. We have a crew ranking and a skipper ranking, and these guys can all build the points throughout the year to make their way and qualify for the Star Sailors League final in the Bahamas in December. And it is such a great event. It really is. It's a different format to the Bacardi Cup. Bacardi Cup, we bow to the experience, the 90 years of this marvelous regatta, starting out in Havana in Cuba, moving to Miami, and they are sticking to their guns and to the old school style of sailing, and good on them for doing so, having a massive big old race, one big old race a day, and then gathering and chattering at the club in the evening. It's a very charming scene here at Coral Reef Yacht Club. But the Star Sailors League final is a different prospect, different format. They're following the ATP tennis tournament format, where you have everybody race each other. They invite about 13, 15 VIP guests, and then the top 12 in the Star Sailors League qualify. But a lot of points at stake here in the Bacardi Cup for the Star Sailors League final. There are 3,000 points up for grabs, which could see some of these guys qualify just from this regatta alone.
Okay, we're looking at Lars Grell, who won our last race yesterday, an Olympic medalist, two-time winner of the Bacardi Cup and a former Star World champion. And what we're seeing in this down leg developing is the boats that were on the right-hand side facing downwind. They've actually been gaining. There's been a slight wind shift. We saw George Szabo going a little bit lower angle towards the mark, also Ivan Melleby, and they've actually lost about 3 or 4 positions just on this downwind leg. So right now it seems like the right-hand side facing downwind was the place to be. And I think that Grell has actually positioned himself rather conservatively, not too far one side or the other. He's going to rely on his boat speed to make gains here.
Well, Lars Grell with Sam Conchalves wonderful fleet racing tactics from these guys. And Lars, it was so cool to have him in our little studio at the end of racing yesterday after he'd won race number 4, admitting a couple of little mistakes that he thought he'd made, and learning from the virtual eye, these marvelous virtual eye graphics being run by none other than Mr. Paul Sharp and Ben over there, who we love so much, focusing on the machinery and the numbers. And tomorrow we might have something rather exciting for you, but I'll keep that up my back pocket just in case. Okay. We might have some really cool statistics flying in tomorrow.
So behind that jib in Germany, 8446, that's Dr. Hubert Merkelbach, and you can see the boots of Sergio Lambertenghi from Lago di Garda in Italy, #1 ranked crew. And you can see his position's a little different than some of the other crews. Some of the other crews are standing more in front of the mast. Sergio is holding onto the mast and standing on the edge of the boat and creating that rocking motion. Very, very smooth, hardly discernible to the eyes of any judge. And I think it's fast and efficient, but modest rock.
Sweet work by Vasella and Trinta, and Merkelbach and Lambertenghi beginning to come in. And as they look downwind, the Merkelbach and Lambertenghi team nearer the gate as they go down. Vasella and Trinta possibly having to sail a little bit further, but with a hotter angle as they come in. So the boats spreading out right across the racetrack as they aim downwind. We're having a little look at Vasella, Peter Vasella, Phil Trinta, leaders at this stage. Now, Louis Habib, famous yachting journalist, famous sailing reporter, globe trotter, looking at regattas around the world. You're out there on our TV catamaran, our TV boat, and let's catch up with you, Louis.
Yeah, you were just talking about the good Dr. Hubert and Frida there. I know you're not focusing on him right now, but literally just you took the camera off, up went the whistle and well ran the turns. They've just been, I think, probably nicked for kinetics. So we're just seeing them do the turns now. If you pan just to the right, you'll see them just completing the last ones. That might be another boat doing them as well, but I definitely saw the good Doctor being taken for a spin there. So the umpires are out on the course and they're stamping their authority on it as well. It's a beautiful sight though, seeing these boats come downwind. This is classic sailing. This isn't 45 knots, spray everywhere and a foot race. There's an amazing game of chess going on. And right in the middle of the pack there, I think you're focused on it now, you can see the tricolour of Rohat and Ponso. And that little incident there with the umpires has cleared a little bit of a way for them there. They're in a nice little position. I know that they're not going to come down in first spot, but they're happy with their speed downwind. But fantastic sight. But we're definitely seeing a few boats doing some turns, Digby.
Thanks, Louis. So the good Dr. Hubert Merkelbach with Sergio Lambertenghi, just as we were talking about kinetics. We can have a little look on virtual eye what happened there. So here virtually on this replay, Merkelbach and Lambertenghi second. They get whistled by the jury on the water and they have to do their turns. I had a little chat with Craig Mitchell from the World Match Racing Tour. Craig has been invited here, one of the on-water judges, and he's one of the two out there on the track, and they're keeping a very close watch on the use of your body to move the boats left and right, to try and rock and pump an ooch and all that kind of stuff, which they're not allowed to do. We have allowed them to do that in our Star Sailors League competitions because it's much shorter racing and perhaps a little bit more physical, a more modern style of star racing. But this is the Bacardi Cup with its wonderful tradition. They are sticking to the old school rules, and there's absolutely no use of kinetics, no use allowed. You're allowed a little pump as you go down waves, but there aren't too many waves here. And you were mentioning, Kathleen, just earlier, as we were looking at the crew, moving their feet around and just kind of gently, subtly, not deceiving, but, just helping the boats along.
well, all the top teams out there are doing kinetics to some degree or another. You don't want to do it too much. And one of the big things that as we've mentioned before, that the judges look for are body movements in the upper body of the skipper rocking back and forth. But we've seen people like Ivan Melleby, Mark Mendeblatt, they're super still in the boat, their bodies are low. But they also look at the leach of the sail, which is the trailing end and back end of the sail. And when the boat rocks, you can see that leach kind of flutter. And that's a telltale sign to the judges that there's some rocking going on. And they'll watch it for a while before they whistle for somebody.
Well, virtually we can see a big spread. McCausland and Cheer just taking a lead over Missoura and Barak from Croatia. They're having a storming run downwind, as are Vesela and Trinta, Doyle and Infelice. And back in 9th position from 2nd, Merkelbach and Lambertenghi. So that's really made them suffer. Top Argentinian team, the Longarella brothers there in 13th, flying the flag for Argentina, which is rather nice because on the line we have none other than Facundo Olezza, Finn sailor. Facundo from Argentina. He was 9th at the Rio Games. He joined us in Nassau for the final in December. And he's just a 22-year-old youngster, raced the Star for a little bit in December, and he came 12th at the Nassau finals. And Facundo, I don't know, you probably can't see me. I'll just run round and grab our little webcam. Oh, he can see us. Hey, Facundo, hi, can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, guys? See you again.
Cool. So tell us, where in the world are you, Facundo?
I'm in Valencia, where I train and live right now. I'm training full-time in my fin, so yeah, I'm here just training full-time.
Rock and roll.
So good racing.
Oh, cool. You were enjoying the racing. So what have you noticed? Anything you can feed from your end, just viewing from the other end through all the technology?
Well, yeah, I see that there is a little breeze, and these boats are super heavy, so it's really, really tough to find a good feeling downwind when you cannot do these kinetics and this free pumping, which we fin sailors like so much. So it's there's a lot of finesse and feeling needed to sail these boats fast downwind with this light breeze.
So Facundo, I beg your pardon, carry on.
Yeah, I was remembering in Nassau, you had a tremendous speed downwind. I think that's where you really shone in the light air. And I think people thought because you were young, you hadn't spent time in the Starboat, that maybe you wouldn't excel. You would be stronger in the downwinds in heavy air. But you showed us in the very light air to have tremendous speed. So what advice would you give to some of these sailors sailing downwind now that can make them go fast within the rules?
Well, I think that the flow that the sail has with the wind is similar in every boat. So my advice would be just to keep the flow coming and going back and forth. Doesn't matter if it's by the lee or a little bit up. I think the key is never stop moving the rudder and always looking for the pressure.
Okay, and you were very well accompanied during the Star Sailors League finals with Federico Mello, and he was an experienced star crew. And we have so many of these other talented star crews out here. And what was it like for somebody like you to get into a boat with a star crew, an Olympian who had so much experience? How did that help you in the boat?
Oh, I owe Federico so much. When I first arrived to Bahamas, I never sailed the Stars before. And it was a really challenging experience for me because I was also sailing with my idols and with guys that have been sailing the Stars for years. So he has been really helpful, and I said a lot of times he was the responsible for the speed we had. He was always saving the problems that I was making with all the ropes on the boat, because it's a really technical boat which needs a lot of time to get sailed properly, you know, because it has so much things to touch downwind and upwind and to trim the boat. It's really hard. So having him as a crew was a really great experience. I learned so much from him.
Okay, now we know that you've won the 420 Worlds, so you are actually a double-handed sailor that's come into single-handed sailing. But here in the Star class, you have a whisker pull, not a spinnaker pull. What was it like the first time when you put up the pole? Was it different sailing a Star with a whisker pull versus the spinnaker pull on the 420?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've sailed double-handed my whole life since I quit from Optimist, and coming to sail back alone by myself in fin, was challenging, and now coming sail a 200 boat was also a challenging experience. I was struggling a bit, because I was used to taking my decisions without any advice, but I think Federico made it really, really easy for me to sail with him, and the communication in the boat was really good, and the maneuvers were not so good because we were not so experienced as a team, but our strategy was to keep the race as simple as we could with less maneuvers than the rest of the boats, and I think we managed to pull that out pretty good.
Facundo, thank you so much. Facundo Alezza for joining us from Valencia, the Argentinian Finn sailor, 9th in Rio. Good on you, mate. And we hope to see you again at the SSL final in Nassau and also at the Tokyo Games.
Oh, let's hope. I would like to race again the stars and see you guys soon. So have a great time there and enjoy the racing.
Thank you kindly. Well, as we've been chatting to Facundo, the boats have made their way down the track, McCaw's Land and Cheer, around that mark ahead of De Maison and Lopez, who've had a charge downwind. The Brazilians, Danesbo and Bernhofer also gaining vast distances, vast chunk of boats on that downwind leg. Doyle, Infeliz, Grail and Conchavez up into 5th, Kathleen.
Okay, and we do see a slight splitting of the marks here. We saw that yesterday as well. A lot of times that means the marks are pretty even, and but I did notice that the first boat shows the right-hand mark facing downwind, which means they want to go up and play that left-hand side again. I think the left-hand side a little bit more luck, maybe not luck on the first upwind, but definitely we saw McCaw's Land and Cheer round that mark first. They could have picked either mark, and they decided to go to the left-hand side of the course.
Okay, I think that could be our Swiss friends, Serge and JP.
Yay!
Serge Pulfer and JP.
Okay, they're rounding the
Chatagnier.
mark in about 20th position, so you just
Good
saw
on
the
'em.
20th position boat.
These guys, stalwarts of the SSL, who work so hard to make an awful lot of the Star Sailors League happen. And the middle of the fleet now going around the gates. Let's tune back in with Loué right down there. You've got, you're the closest to this racing, right next to this bottom mark. Over to you, Loué.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the peloton going round now, and this is where, places can change quite dramatically at a bottom mark like this. There's an awful lot of work for both the crew to do to make a smooth rounding, and maybe one for virtual eye. At some stage, have a look at the replay and look at the virtual very close collision between Rohart and Ponso and Zebo and Atushi. They didn't touch, but I tell you what, there was a fair bit of shouting and it was damn close. But now we've got the action going on in the peloton here, and this is where the nitty-gritty goes on in this class. This is where they're fighting for air, they're fighting for position. They're down here, the air's all dirty, it's all over the place. And this is the real muck and brass of star sailing down here. If you're away in clear air, you're laughing. It's so much easier when you can do what you want to do. Coming in now, I mean, it's like an explosion of sail round these bottom marks, and a hell of a lot of skill. Coming in to the bottom mark shortly, bow number 24, I think he's in vision, just coming to the mark now. I just want to have a big shout out for bow 24, who's approaching the gate at the moment, and that's a Danish boat, and they're representing the Tonse Yacht Club, and that will be hosting the World Championship next year. Big shout out for Rune Scheid-Nielsen and Henrik Aronson. But a lot of boats have gone right up here. It's a real split again in the fleet, which is a good sign that they don't know which way to go. Back to you in the studio, Digby.
Well, Loué on our TV boat at the bottom of the mark, they will reposition and work their way back up towards the middle of the racetrack and catch up with the leaders. Virtually, though, we're seeing Chatagnier and Pulfer, bottom of our virtual eye screen, just coming behind Melleby and Revkind. And as we move back down the
Escalera.
Escalera.
That's one of our female crews. They're from Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay, Liz Escalera sailing with her dad, and it's her second year ever sailing in the Star. She is the Fleet Assistant Secretary of the Narragansett Bay Star Fleet. But cool to see 4 ladies racing in this Bacardi Cup. Some helms and some crewing, mostly helming actually, and we could do with some more young ladies, more ladies sailing in the Star. I know it's hard, you had to go yourself,
Yeah,
Kathleen.
the Star has a tremendous load on it. If you want to drive the boat, you better have strong arms and really like to hike. But I think if you had some more ladies, it might make the after racing parties a little more interesting.
Back towards the front, Virtual Eye bringing us through the top 20 there. Rohart and Ponceau up into 15th position. They are still within sight of another Bacardi Cup victory. They started today in second place overall, and just behind Mark Mendelblatt and Magnus Liljal. And we can see Mendelblatt and Liljal, they've been having a pretty decent race so far, and now they have clawed their way up into second position. So they started top of the leaderboard, 4 points clear of the Frenchman Rohart and Ponceau. Diaz and Prada were in third overall, but they are back in the clubhouse, champing at the bit, having been black flag, chewing over that moment, that single split second that they were over the line.
Okay, we were just looking at Melody and Revkin, and they actually are to the right of the rest of the leaders, I'd say. But it looks like it's been, for probably the first half of this week, a little bit of a right-hand shift. But if the wind comes back left again, they're going to probably lose distance on the other leading boats that had gone a little bit more to the left-hand side. And we're starting to see those boats, actually, the leaders tacking back over onto port tack, and they're going to cross boats like Melody and Revkin, who've gone to the right-hand side. It's a game of chess. You always want to be what's on called the lifted tack, and that's the tack or the angle that's pointing your boat closest to the windward mark. And that changes depending on wind shifts. And the sailors are looking at their compasses. They can see the numbers. Are they down 5 degrees? Are they down 10 degrees? Usually if they're down around 7 degrees or 10 degrees, that's when they want to tack. And usually you want to tack to leeward and ahead of the boats around you, just as Lawrence and Coleman have done here.
Well, here we are looking at Luke Lawrence and Ian Coleman, bow 39. Racing beautifully so far in race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup. If you've just joined us, this is the 90th Bacardi Cup. It's one of the oldest trophies in sailing. It started out in Havana, it's moved to Miami, and they have traditionally one big old race each day across 6 days. We're into race number 5, and we're having one race today. And they are just over halfway around the race course. They'll go up to the top and then down to the bottom, and then they'll finish at the top mark again. So we are around halfway through race number 5. Lawrence and Coleman working their way back into the center of the racetrack. I'll tell you what I've noticed is Rohart and Ponceau from 15th. They are managing to claw their way up and overtake boats upwind. So the Frenchmen beginning to get their mojo on, their upwind speed, their trim, their technique. You can see where they are right now. They're in a bit of clean air. They've got no one really to windward of them, working their way back into the middle of the track. And we've seen over the past few days just how incredibly well that they can recover from being back, out in the 20s, and to be able to claw their way ahead. So there they are, bow 37. They're neck and neck with Luke Lawrence and Ian Coleman from our perspective as we look from the right-hand side of the racetrack right across. And there the Frenchmen are, Xavier Rohart, Pierre-Alexis Ponceau.
Yeah, the boats just on the left-hand side looked like they had just slightly more pressure because their angle was a little bit higher. So a boat like Lawrence and Coleman, they're going fast, but the tracker was showing that their angle wasn't as high, which to me indicated a slight change in pressure. It could be a little shift, but usually when there's more pressure, you're able to point a little bit higher.
Okay, so these guys pretty much in drag race mode, and it's all about trim, about speed, about feeling, about making that boat go as fast as humanly and physically possible. And pure straight line speed, they talk about it a lot. the Olympic class sailors train day after day after day on pure boat speed. And we've got some of the best sailors in the world, and by far some of the best star sailors in the world in this division here on this racetrack in Biscayne Bay, hammering around the track. McCaw's Land and Cheer, bow 90, also having a great race here. The statistical leaders, they're poking their nose ahead of Doyle and Infeliz and Buckingham and Sperry, Mendelblatt and Liljarl, and they're the Frenchmen's now up into 5th. Grail and Conchalvis, that class act, 2 times winner of the Bacardi Cup. Rohart Ponceau, 1-time winner of the Bacardi Cup. Mendelblatt, how many times has he won? Twice, 2 times winner. So we're seeing quite a few existing winners of the Bacardi Cup in that top 6.
Yeah, and you just mentioned we have so many Olympians, Olympic class sailors who are in the star class at this event, and world champion star sailors. But interestingly enough, for those of you who are new to the sport of sailing, it's very difficult to qualify for the Olympics in sailing. It's only 1 boat per country that gets to go, unlike skiing or track and field and gymnastics, where they might send, 3 to 5 representatives. In sailing, you have to be number 1. So even though we might not all be Olympians out on this racetrack, there are so many Olympic level sailors up there in the top 20, top 30.
One of them, Charlie Buckingham, 11th at the Rio Olympics in the laser class. And we've enjoyed chatting away with Charlie and Austin Sperry, his crewman. And Charlie told us yesterday that he's gunning full bore for Tokyo, the Tokyo Games. He'll have to qualify over again, Kathleen, within the US sailing team. And they've got some class sailors here in the USA, and they are gunning for more medals, because I think the USA hold in a bronze, I believe, from the Rio Games in sailing.
That's right, in that class. Okay, here we're looking at Eric Doyle, another former world champion in the star class, sailing with Payson Felice. They're both from California. And in bow 30, the young Charlie Buckingham with Austin Sperry. And Austin actually went to the Olympic Games with his father-in-law, an interesting combination. And his father-in-law had been sailing the Star for years, often against Augie Diaz. And actually Augie and Austin's father-in-law were at school together. So a lot of families out here in the Star family.
Well, we can hear the waves swooshing past the bow and the hull of Buckingham and Sperry's boat. Full hiking, more breeze out on the racetrack, and they're fully hiked and powered up now. We can see the boom, the super low boom, swooping its way across the deck towards the stern. Above our camera position, these vast mainsails of the Star class. This boat, designed some 106 years ago in the USA, was used at the Olympics from around 1936 to 2012, with a few gaps in amongst that. You never know, they may well be back at some stage. You can never quite tell with the Olympics, but right now there we're seeing a very traditional keel boat, very tweaky, very adjustable, and Charlie Buckingham, laser sailor, in 3rd position here in race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup.
Well, it's interesting looking at the meters difference between boats today. We don't see a huge difference like we've seen other days. I mean, 56 meters from the leader does seem like a lot, but in the previous few days we've seen huge numbers between the boats. And today I'd say the fleet is a lot closer together in general.
Well, at this just over halfway stage of race number 5, we can do some on-the-go statistical analysis of the overall projected points. And right now, as it stands, Mendelblatt and Liljarl are top of the overall leaderboard. Rohart, 2-1-5-4. Rohart Ponceau in 2nd spot, 17 points. 5 points behind the leaders. Grail and Conchalvis now in the top 3 position, still within fighting, biting distance of the leaders. Szabo and Natucci dropping down into 4th spot. Diaz and Prada in 5th, and we're on board with the overall leaders. Mark Mendelblatt and Magnus Liljedahl. You can see there Mark Mendelblatt helming away, Magnus crewing, hiking right out on the side. He's getting his little weed stick on the go. Mark Mendelblatt adjusting the backstay. They're adjusting the twist of the sail at the top to power up or depower. Very super fine tuning of the Star. And here in fourth position in this race, this is seeing Mendelblatt and Liljedahl dominate the Bacardi Cup at the moment in race number 5.
Yeah, just a technical point. We talked about Mark adjusting the stay there. And in the starboat, you actually are adjusting the stays almost like you would a vang or a main sheet, another boat. You can see that the main sheet coming off the end of the boom there, it's pretty much just cleated. It stays just a couple inches off the deck. And rather than playing the main sheet, you don't play it because it has so much load on it. It's so big. And so instead, they're adjusting the stays like that. So very different style than for somebody, especially like Mark, who came from the laser class, where you're playing your main sheet all the time. And I think most people are used to that, but not in the starboat. You cleat the main sheet and then play the stays.
Well, while the race was postponed this morning, I had a nice chance to have a chat with Mark. He's known as a little bit of a mystery man around the boat park because he'll turn up, go racing, and then filter away like a ghost. But he spent a good half hour chatting this morning. It was really great to hear a little bit about his history. We'll play that little piece tomorrow. But he started out in Optimists, and then he went into the laser class. He sailed and raced against the likes of Ben Ainsley and Robert Scheid in the laser, the legends of the sport. And now, after a while in banking, he's a full-time skipper and sailor in the Stars and in quite a few big boats as a strategist, tactician and helmsman. So Mark Mendelblatt, class act, and he said very definitively that he is here to win the Bacardi Cup.
Yeah, I can imagine probably twice wasn't enough for Mark. Mark is always trying to sail at the top, and I think the sailors really enjoy coming out and fighting against these other top sailors. They raced against each other in the Star class, the last quad. Now that the Star is out of the Olympics, they can come back here in the Star Sailors League and keep up that high level intensity of racing. These guys know one another. They enjoy racing at such a high level with pro sailors, and the Star Sailors makes that possible today.
Well, over races 1 and 3, Mendelblatt and Rohart, the American and French skippers, got into a match racing duel, and we're just watching them get into an engagement yet again. So these two just can't seem to avoid each other on the racetrack, and they match race and tack and duel and duck and dive in amongst it. So virtually we can see that Mendelblatt has won over the Frenchman Rohart and Ponceau behind them, and they are approaching the cone towards the top mark on this second lap of the race track. They'll go up around the top mark, back down to the bottom, and then up to the top again. So we're just over halfway in race number 5, and a lot more sailing to go, and a lot more chance for these characters here, Mendelblatt and Liljedahl. Magnus Liljedahl, the great guy, 63 years old, I think he told us the other day, gold medalist from Sydney in the Star with Mark, am I correct? And these guys out here proving
Mark
to
Reynolds.
be Mark Reynolds, I beg your pardon, thank you. And Mark Reynolds watching over at Quantum Sails all the way on the other side of the coast. Good on you, Mark, if you're watching us and tracking this, but at the moment it's in the big story, the big picture, it's Mendelblatt and Liljedahl, the front runners overall in race number 5, 4th position in this race number 5.
Yeah, McCausland and Shear are now winning the race. They've been sailing an excellent series as well. John McCausland is a world champion. He won, I believe, the Worlds in San Diego. And Roger Shear is a Canadian, so we have an American-Canadian team out there in the front.
Quite a few nationalities on the racetrack, some 11 countries represented here, including Japan, a lot of German Star, big in Germany, Argentina, Brazil, USA, Canada, and a few from many nationalities, France, of course, and Germany. So 11 nations represented at the Bacardi Cup, And it used to be mostly American, Cuban race, but now wide open to the world, and people travel long distances to make it here to the beautiful Biscayne Bay to compete in these fabulous conditions.
Yeah, while the rest of Europe is freezing, the Star Sailors like to ship their boats over here in containers. The Brazilians keep their boats here as well. And a lot of times they'll just have a second home here for the winter, or they'll fly back and forth. But a lot of the crews out here are pro sailors, so they're very busy flying all around the world, but they love stopping in Miami for the winter. Warm water, nice breeze, and great hospitality from the Coral Reef Yacht Club and the other clubs in the bay.
And we are part of Miami Sailing Week. There are a few other classes racing around, the A classes, the Vipers, and so on and so forth. And they've been rolled into this Bacardi Cup regatta over the past 5 years. And it's a big celebration of sailing here in Miami, while, as you say, the rest of the world can be fairly cold. I heard it was snowing in New York, just up the coast.
It's good for the skiers.
Cold, 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 cold.
We'll be water skiing down here, Davey.
I hope so. Well, here's McCall's Land and Cheer just ahead in race number 5. And as we get a little bit of geography, we can see just how far, how near they are to that top mark. Doyle in Felice, just behind them. Buckingham and Sperry on that ley line coming in. Very close, really nice tactics by Buckingham and Sperry. Yes, carry on.
You notice there were a lot of boats there on that long core tack coming into the mark. So I think in a little bit we're going to see a very crowded mark running, because there looked like there's some boats that might have overstood that ley line.
Well, Loué is out on the camera boat right next to these boats as they go around the top mark. Getting interesting position-wise for 3rd, 4th and 5th, Loué.
Yes, indeed, Digby. And just to remind you, there is a bit of tide running, which means that some of these boats may have understood this mark coming in on port tack, which could make life interesting. But yeah, we've seen a bit of a mix-up at the top here. But look at that, Lars Grail and Galvez coming back into it. You just can't keep them out. Medenblatt also back into it. And here come the French, Rohart and Bonso. They're going to have to duck. Yeah, they're going to have to duck de Maison and Lopez, and they're taking them all the way to the mark. A really nice rush of blood there from Rohart just to see them through. Bit of acceleration coming into that mark. And here comes Szabo and Natucci as well. Nice bit of clear air for them. Probably having a bit of think about which way they're going to go on this next downwind leg. Most of the boats went right last time, but we've got a big line of boats coming in on port, and I think a few of them are going to find it hard to squeeze in there. Back to you in the studio, Digby.
Well, Loué right next to the top mark and the spreader mark. Szabo, Natucci working their way round in 8th, 9th. Misura and Barak, the Croatians, just coming into it. Danisbo and Bernhofer from Switzerland in that mix in 10th spot. Lawrence and Coleman, here they come, the young Americans, the young guns. Around they go, Trinta and Vasella, who had such a great race, number 2 I think it was, where they were leading so much of it. Here they are in contention, having a decent race, number 5. The Longarellas there, powering through, quite a few on the other ley line. Sergio Lambertenghi with Hubert Merkel back after their penalty on the last downwind. Whoa, they've dropped quite a lot of distance. They were in 2nd spot on the last downwind run, had the flag blown up at them by the umpires for, we don't exactly know, but probably rocking, probably kinetics, and that's put them down and probably upset their mojo and their flow a little bit, you know, because they're now down in 17th. It can really shake you, you know, if the whistle blows, somebody points a finger at you, you have to do turns, you kind of lose a little bit of focus.
Well, and also I think when they were in the front pack, they could very easily choose which mark they wanted to go to and then get a lane after they rounded the mark. But as you get further back in the fleet, as we've said many times before, they probably couldn't dictate the way that they wanted to go in the beginning of that beat, and probably ended off, my guess, going a little bit to the right-hand side of the course, which wasn't so favored.
Melleby and Revkin just approaching the spreader mark. And, you know, they started today in 6th position. Right now they're in 19th, so they'll be discarding this result and counting their 3rd, 13th, 5th and 10th. So a bit of mathematics to be done as we go into the final lap of the track. They'll go down to the bottom gates, then back up to finish right here. So there's another half hour or so of racing, another 40 minutes of racing for these guys. A lot can happen in those 40 minutes for the top runners and riders and everyone throughout the whole fleet battling for places. One tiny place could make the difference between getting on the podium and not being on the podium, or beating your rival or not beating your rival, or being the top half of the fleet, which many of these sailors, that is their ambition. And that's where I come from, Kathleen. When I race, I want to be in the top half of the fleet and not the bottom half of the fleet, and that's how it goes. And a lot of guys in this middle fleet punch, that's their goal, and they've told us so.
Well, I think the middle of the fleet is the toughest place to sail. When you're going downwind like this, if you're in the back of the pack, the wind is coming and getting to you first. If you're in the middle, there really aren't lanes. You can't drive down when you need to or up when you need to. So sailing in the middle of the pack takes a lot of skill, and only the best can really climb their way out of that middle pack. But there, as we said before, there are many great battles going on there. There's many guys who've been racing this boat for a long time. They know the boats around them, and every single boat, every single meter makes a big difference in just 1 point at the end of the day. But in a fleet like this, the points are so close that really you have to try to gain every bit of distance that you can.
Well, here is our live drone shot from a few feet up in the air. Seb, our cameraman, is flying his brand new drone, turned up yesterday, and away we go, getting into action, getting that beautiful 3/4 angle, looking down onto the boats. Very illustrative, great angle this. You see just how big these mainsails are, and you can see how far forward they are tilting the mast. That mast can rotate and tilt and move forward and backwards, and they're drooping the mast well forward to use the mainsail almost as a parachute, a big spinnaker. And it's a big size, and you get a good feeling there from the drone angle.
Yeah, they tip the mast forward. It's one of the few boats that does that. The Snipes also do that as well. But it really powers up the sail downwind. But when it gets windy, you've got to kind of creep that mast back. You see they're very tall, thin, just aluminum mast. There's no carbon fiber going on in these boats. So if you get more breeze, the further forward you have the mast, becomes a little bit precarious, a little bit harder to sail. But it's just like so powerful to just pop the mast forward, open up that leech, and power on downwind.
Well, virtually we are flying like the drone towards the front of the fleet, and look at this.
Nicely.
Well, McCausland and Cheer there on virtual, out ahead. Oh, and we're looking at projected points on the left. I beg your pardon. Thanks, Paul. So Mendelblatt and Liljarl now projected 8 points ahead of Rohart and Ponceau. This is for the overall regatta, the overall standings in the Bacardi Cup during race number 5, counting all the races right up to now with a discard. So Mendelblatt and Liljarl beginning to pull away in the overall story. Rohart and Ponceau now tied on points with Grail and Conchalves, Szabo and Natucci in 4th, Diaz and Prada getting knocked down the overall leaderboard. They were in 3rd starting today. Now they're down in 5th. They're back in the clubhouse, probably watching this, gnashing their teeth, going, we should be out there at the front of the fleet. If only we weren't over the line.
Well, they were in the front of the fleet, but just at the wrong time.
Yeah, McCausland and Cheer. This fabulous performance in race number 5 have seen them leap up into 6th spot. Buckingham and Sperry have leapt up into 7th overall. Doyle, Infeliz in the mix as are Melleby and Revkin and Lawrence and Coleman. Look at this tight battling here. 3 boats neck and neck in a row, fighting for places and position, and that is a pure drag race as they head downwind. We might be able to pick up that live shot in just a moment, but virtually we can just see how close Doyle, Infelice, Buckingham and Sperry and Mendelblatt and Liljarl are in that little second rank there. Grail and Conchalves have decided to jibe away, I think, as have the Frenchmen. They want to get out onto their own and come back into the middle of the racetrack, but Doyle, Infelice, Buckingham, Sperry and Mendelblatt and Liljarl neck and neck, drag racing downwind. Mendelblatt, an absolute maestro in these close quarter combat scenarios.
Well, yes, and I think he's extremely confident in his speed. He's proven that time and time downwind in the snipe, no matter what his crew has been. And you can see Charlie Buckingham, I know the tracker stopped a little bit here, but he's in a very difficult place to sail. He can't really control his destiny. He's what we call a sandwich right now between Doyle and Mendelblatt, and so they're dictating where he can go. And the most he can hope for is that Mark Mendelblatt wants to jibe out and go to the other mark. But right now, he's just got to hold his own, and they're dictating where he can go. So he just has to maintain his speed, keep going in the direction, and wait for one of them to make the move, as Mendelblatt and Liljarl did. So this is going to open up a little bit of room for Buckingham and Sperry to kind of like be able to choose their own destiny.
Well, it looks like our camera boat is now working its way down the other side of the racetrack. So here we go, getting the live shots of the leaders. It's great looking at Doyle, second place there, bow 32. Is that, am I right? 23, I beg his pardon.
That was George Szabo driving right there.
Szabo behind, jibing away. So this is the second placeman, Doyle and Infelice.
Also
ready to
getting ready
jibe.
for a jibe.
Away they go, big mainsail. Woof, woof.
Look how the crew just hangs over the side, rocks the boat.
Gets a
And
bit of
nice
a roll
pump
tack
by
going.
Eric Doyle. Excellent
Umpires
acceleration.
right there in the mix, watching these guys very closely. And we're going to ask Louis on our TV boat. Louis, keep your eyes out for any flags, whistles and penalties. Let's join you just for a sec, Louis, because there's a super drag race going on.
Yeah, fantastic action, Digby, down here, and that was a very big jibe there. You probably saw him come over. I think he might have actually whacked one of the shrouds on the way through. I saw it go to wang, sort of in a cartoon fashion. So it was a big jibe there. I'm not sure if that was the best jibe that they've pulled off, but yeah, a cracking battle down here. And you know, these guys must be getting tired now, and the adrenaline must be pulsing through these two guys. We do have one of the committee boats very close by. I'm not sure if it's one of the jury or not. They're having a good look at him, but yeah, you know, this is the beauty of traditional star class racing. These two locked in a duel here, and they'll be having a jibing match, I'm sure, on the way down. You know, once you get locked in like that, you can, you know, sort of the practical thing to do would say, look, let's not mess each other up and let anybody else in. But, you know, it's like chucking two boxes in a ring and telling them not to hit each other. They're going to. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, a cracking battle going on for second and third. And beautiful weather, as you can see now. You can see those very active cumulus clouds in the distance, and beautiful shimmer on the water. It's a lovely Friday in Miami. And I'm told they like to go partying here Friday night. Obviously, we'll be tucked up in bed very early with a cup of green tea because we've got to work tomorrow. But it's Friday. It's Miami. The sun is shining. What could be better? Back to you in the studio, Diggers.
Well, good sentiments, Louis, and what better way of spending the late afternoon here in Biscayne Bay than watching a magnificent race, a drag race down to the bottom mark. Eric Doyle, Payson, Infelice there, almost neck and neck with Buckingham and Sperry, with Mendelblatt and Liljarl in that little trio as we look from the right-hand side of the course across to the boats heading down to the bottom mark. McCausland and Cheer out to the right. They're taking it away a little bit. They've got over 80 meters on Mendelblatt and Liljal. Mendelblatt, Liljal, bit more central, but look to the left in virtual eye. We can see Rohard and Ponso, Grail and Conchalves carving their central way dead downwind almost. So it'll be interesting to see at the bottom mark how that pays out between the guys on the left looking downwind, Rohard, Ponso, Grail and Conchalves, that little duo on the left virtually, with Buckingham, Sperry, Doyle, Infelice. Doyle, Infelice taking it furthest right as they look down, and they have perhaps a little more distance, but perhaps a hotter angle coming into the gate.
Yeah, I think the boats on the right-hand side of the course facing downwind, I feel like they actually can have a better angle coming into the mark. It seemed that earlier on in the downwind you could make it work on the left-hand side, or basically left of the fleet, which you see a couple of boats off in the screen. But it's ultimately what is the last wind shift coming to that mark, and also which way do they want to go when they get to the gate. So if you're on the right-hand side, probably you're looking at the right-hand gate. But the boats that have distance between them can make that decision. When you're in a position like Charlie Buckingham, kind of sandwiched in between these two boats here, he has to let them make their decision first, and then he can go where he needs to go.
Well, there is Charlie. Real focus, concentration as he tweaks a little bit. We're getting a tiny little bit of audio from on board, and we can see these guys and hear them chattering away. Charlie holding the main sheet in his left hand, helming away with his right hand, looking down the track. Austin Sperry, who is standing up, he'll be looking behind Charlie, telling him what is coming up behind him. Right now, they are clear behind. We saw earlier Rohard and Ponso jibing and tacking through their stern, but right now they are clear astern, which is a great thing to have, so there's no one crowding and blanketing their breeze. And there, the external shot, there is Austin Sperry with the blue cap.
Looks like they're getting ready for a jibe, just trying to match the boats around them.
Ready for a jibe. Austin leaning over, grabbing a bit of weed, perhaps. Yep, got his stick out. Let's see if he jumps back out onto the foredeck like a cat in silk slippers. Which they have to be. These big guys dancing around the foredeck of these boats. Austin Sperry crewing for the laser Olympic sailor Charlie Buckingham, and teaching him the ropes in this star. And they have just almost, I think, taken out Mendelblatt and Liljal. Doyle and Infelice perhaps taking out. So look at that row. McCausland and Cheer away in the front. They are getting clawed down. Their 80-meter lead now down to 50 meters with Doyle and Infelice, Buckingham and Sperry, Mendelblatt and Liljal, not to mention Grail and Conchalves, who are maestros downwind, clambering at their heels. Rohard and Ponso falling back a little bit. They were neck and neck with the Brazilians Grail and Conchalves, but just dropping back a little bit on this downwind leg.
Yeah, I think that's just as I said before, the boats that got a little bit to the left downwind, they're going to lose a little bit at the end here unless there's a shift that's going to come in.
Well, we're looking bow down the bows now. We're far ahead. Mark Mendelblatt helming with Magnus Liljal, the Swedish-American gold medalist from Sydney. Magnus, who runs the American Paralympic training program here from the US Center, from the room right next door to us. And Magnus, big, larger-than-life character, and doing some amazing stuff in the USA. And through our shot, through Mark's view in the background, that's tricolor, the French flag of Rohard and Ponso, the Frenchman really trying to attack Mendelblatt and Liljal, because in the overall story, these two are top of the overall leaderboard. Mendelblatt and Liljal some 8 points ahead of the Frenchman overall. So here we go, ready for a jibe. Let's listen in. Smoothly done.
Getting his weight down, center of gravity down. Mark is a two-time Olympian in the laser class and in the star class, and he spent the past 4 years sailing in the NACRA catamaran, the Olympic catamaran, with his wife, who was also a windsurfer who sailed for Portugal and Brazil. And so now he's back in a little bit of a slower boat. You can take your time a little bit more with the tactics. When you're in a faster boat, you've got to make your tactical decisions very fast. You don't make as many tactical decisions. But I think that time in the faster boat probably honed the speed with which he could make his decisions. Magnus is talking to him right now.
Yeah, tension's going high.
It's interesting. They're talking about boats going hot, boats going low. They're all eyes and ears. Mark looking everywhere. They are getting attacked by Rohart and Ponceau ever so slightly as they come down to that bottom gate. Well, we can swap between our live shots and our onboard as they go around the gate, which would be quite fun. As the leaders go round, we're still hearing a little bit from Mendelblatt. Korsland and Cheer, away they go, making their way upwind.
Left gate, right? I don't know, dude. I don't fucking know.
Whoops, we're listening a little bit on board. We can see and feel the tension on the racetrack with the American-Swedish duo there. And you really do get a real proper flavour and feeling of how intense it is. Let's listen now.
Don't go in there. Don't go in there. Don't go in there. Don't go in there. There's no overlap.
Okay, here's the instant that they're talking about just behind. That's boat 23 and Mendelblatt.
Okay, big communications from Mendelblatt to the boat just behind them. Is it Grail and Conchalves?
Okay, they've chosen
He was
the
talking to
opposite
Doyle,
gate.
I believe.
Okay,
So
the leader's
Doyle,
choosing to go to the left-hand side.
Forgive me, Kathleen. So what was going on there was that Mendelblatt was getting into that two-boat circle just in the lead. So Doyle and Infeliz had to keep clear, and Mark was doing the traditional no overlap, and telling them to get out of his way. And so a little bit of aggression that we could witness on the racetrack there, part of sailing, and you could just feel the tension on board as they got into that crunchy moment.
Okay, we just saw the Croatians, Missouri and Barak rounding another good race by that team. 9th place. Bow 51, Dennis Bow and Bonhoeffer. A good day after starting a race over the line early, climbing their way back up through the fleet.
Okay, rest of the fleet coming around. So Szabo and Natucci, Mendelblatt and Liljal electing to choose the right-hand side and then weave their way through the rest of the fleet. And the rest of the guys who have gone round just sticking to the left and going left up the track as they look up.
Trinter Vasella just rounding the left-hand gate. Hector and Hugo Longarella, the twins from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Bow 49 rounding right now.
So as these boats go round, Chris, I'm going to ask if we can do a little virtual replay of that just before that gate, and we'll focus in on Mendelblatt and Doyle and just get a little feeling, because we heard it and we saw it through our live shots, but I think it would be quite fun to see a little replay, a virtual replay, and get a feeling for what Mark was trying to do there versus Eric Doyle. And up they go, up the track. And none other than Mr. Bruno Prada has just walked into the US Sailing Center to come and join us in our commentary position. We'll hear from Bruno in just a moment. But as soon as we're good to go on that replay, Bruno, we can have a little replay of this bottom mark rounding. And here we go. This is a replay as Doyle, Infelice, Mendelblatt and Leeljarl approach that two-boat circle down in there. We were listening to Mark saying no room, and I think he was talking to Grail, actually. I think he was talking over to Lars Grail, just saying you can't get in there in between me and the mark. So I believe that was Mark talking to Lars and giving Lars a bit of stick as they went round that mark. Mendelblatt firing out in front. So interesting little replay there, interesting virtual eye replay. Mendelblatt and Grail. Grail now tacks over onto starboard to carve and weave his way through that little pack. Mendelblatt and Leeljarl just tacking over at that stage. Zebo Natucci continuing. We can, they can take us right up to real time in virtual. Doyle, Infelice now tacking back into the middle of the fleet. Buckingham and Sperry continuing on the left-hand side, following McCausland and Cheer, who now tack just in front of Charlie, Buckingham and Austin Sperry. Okay, we're back into real time of race number 5 on the final leg going upwind. In our studio, we are joined by none other than Mr. Bruno Prada, one of the best star sailors in the entire world. And Bruno, it's an honor to have you with us. Thank you very much. I know you are going to be disappointed by being bat flagged earlier.
Yeah, it was pretty, for me, it's pretty curious because I saw the images and I didn't see us in the over the line. Clear. Not even in the 10 boats, top 10 boats. So we need to maybe watch a little bit more. I don't know what happened, but we came from very behind. We are not already there, so it's for me it's a surprise to be a black flag, and I want to watch a little bit more. Maybe we find us, but we were not in the line. We can see in the line, we cannot find us in any way. You can see Andy Mack, that was black flag, and we were not there. So we need to watch a little bit more, try to find where we were.
Okay, well, I can see in your expression you're still extremely annoyed because that could be your chances of the championship. I mean, we still have another race to go, but at the moment you're going to have to count that as your discard. And you went into today in 3rd overall with an 11, a 3rd, a 6th and a 3rd. Great scoreline, and another single digit would have seen you well in contention. And we've seen you now overall around 6th, I think, with having to count today. Well, you know, commiserations. We tried to analyze the starts, and you can have a look at it later. We'll show you on virtual, and you can see for yourself and judge for yourself. But we are now into the closing stages of race number 5. Let's see if we can get into it, Bruno, a little bit and analyze what's going on out there. Buckingham and Sperry just to leeward of the race leaders. McCausland and Cheer. Doyle, Infelice in the mix there, just inside. Mendelblatt and Leeljarl in 4th. Grail and Conchavos, Roja Ponso. Some usual suspects in that little group, Bruno.
Yeah, today is a classic old man's expressway. The current's coming is coming out, so the left side usually is better in the upwind, and the downwind also you play the L. So I think this old man's expressway, I think that McCausland and Buckingham has pretty good position, and you can see that all the sailors are coming to the left side of the racing area. For sure, more pressure and less current.
So when you say there's a bit of current, as we're looking up the race course towards the top mark and now the finish line, which way is the water moving?
the water moving from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen.
Ah, okay. And now, as you say, we're seeing pretty much all the leaders coming out of the left and off the start line. You were going for a pin end start, and all the early leaders, and in fact the leaders now, were on that left-hand side of the track. So clearly, off the start, left hand was paying.
Yeah, for sure. For sure was the... Today is a classic day in Miami, and usually when you have a classic day, the left pays.
Okay. Now our leaders just tacking and getting into a little tacking duel. These guys suffering from the exhaust and fighting as hard as they can for clean air. Looking at Charlie Buckingham, Austin Sperry. Interesting, we're talking about Charlie Buckingham, a laser sailor, just jumping in here with Austin Sperry, a star sailor, doing an amazing job here in second spot.
Charlie's an amazing sailor. He's sailing with a very good crew that helps a lot. Austin has a lot of experience and for sure can help him a lot of in maneuvers and set up the boat, and for sure have a good crew. He's helping a lot, Charlie. But also Charlie is a super laser sailor, a top 10 in the world, so I think he has a great future in star class.
Well, here they are engaging again, and I think we may well see McCausland and Cheer tack on top of Buckingham and Sperry. And this is almost page one of your racing tactics. In the heat of the battle, to tack onto your opposition and keep yourself between the guy behind you and the finish line.
And I think you just see there in the tacks that Austin Sperry was able to get himself out over the side of the boat after the tack. Roger Cheer hasn't been sailing as much as Austin, a little bit older, and I think in the tacking duels, usually the younger team can prevail. Austin just has a lot of time in the boat these days, and a little bit younger, gets over there faster, and that helps you accelerate out of those tacks.
Well, Buckingham and Sperry doing everything they can to get a little bit of separation from McCausland and Cheer, and perhaps hit a little lift and a little tiny bit of pressure difference as they approach the finish line. McCausland and Cheer now banking their lead, going back into the middle and covering the guys on the right hand side as they look up. So it's not just two boats in this. The race leaders have to cover the second, third and fourth. Now we're seeing what Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry can do in that second spot. They've rolled the dice and they've carved their own way to the left-hand side as they look up the track, and we'll see how well that pays off for them in these final stages of race number 5. Just under a nautical mile towards the top mark are two leaders over on the left-hand side of the track, but a lot of boats out on the right, Bruno.
Yeah, they are on the right, but I think the left is much better, much pressure, and I mean sometimes you don't have a lane to go, so you have to try to find your own lane, and usually the second pack have to find there is no lane going to the left, so we have to go a little bit to the right and then come to the left.
On our camera boat now working its way up the left-hand side of the track, getting these very close super images as we look at this tacking duel in this stage of the race. Lou, a fabulous match race now going on between Buckingham and Sperry and McCausland and Cheer, and I think, Lou, we are just seeing Buckingham and Sperry take the lead. Over to you.
Yeah, really a fantastic foot race for this last leg. Just so you know, there is a change of course. The finish has been moved slightly to the left. It's maybe 100 metres, no more. So as Bruno was saying, the left looks good, and looks like we may have well had a shift this way as well. So the left is looking good here. But yeah, a fantastic race. And just remember, going into this morning, these two were 7th and 8th. There is 2 points apart from them, so even if Charlie Buckingham gets a second here, John McCausland can't get over the top of him. But you know, coming to the Bacardi Cup and winning a race, you know, that's what these two are gunning for now. And neither of them have won a race today. This regatta. So to come away from the Bacardi Cup and say you won a race, with world champions behind you, you know, that's something to be extremely proud of, and I'm sure we're going to see a fantastic battle to the finish here. I would say that McCausland's slightly bow up, whether that's because he's not pointing as high. I'd say he's got a bit of a speed edge at the moment over Charlie Buckingham, but I'm sure on virtual you've got it down to a decimal of a knot. Back to you in the studio, Digby.
Well, Louis, it's quite fascinating because Buckingham and Sperry are 9 metres now, mathematically, more further upwind than Buckingham and Sperry. So, I beg your pardon, Buckingham and Sperry 9 metres ahead of McCausland and Cheer. So, right now, the advantage is with Buckingham and Sperry. The guys on bow 30, right of our picture, are ahead of bow 90 there. But when McCausland and Cheer tack over to nail the ley line to the finish, they will then hit starboard and they'll have the right of way over Buckingham and Sperry. Well, Paul from, beg your pardon, Louis, Paul from Virtual is telling us that at the moment both of these boats are just about laying the finish line. So Bruno, we are in a straight line drag race.
I think that position of Charlie and Austin are much, much better than John. The wind usually comes from the left, so probably they're going to have more pressure than John. So it's just a matter if they can cross John or not. This will be meters. But I think the position of Charlie and Austin is much, much better than the John.
Right, Buckingham and Sperry in the middle of our shot. McCausland and Cheer on the left-hand side of our shot, but we are slightly above them, so mathematically it is the right-hand boat, bow 30, Buckingham Sperry in the lead, some 10 metres nearer the finish line than McCausland and Cheer. We'll watch this as they go all the way up to the top. The guys further away through our picture, Lars Grail there, Sam Conchalves, I think, who is that? Szabo, Natucci, and Mendelblatt and Liljedahl. They are going to have to do another tack to cross the line. But it is going right now to Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry. There, virtually, you can gauge for yourself whether they are going to just squeeze over that line on this tack.
Okay, we've seen some excellent sailing by George Szabo, who's moved all the way up into third in the speed. He rounded the leeward mark at around 6th, 7th place and has gradually been climbing himself up. And we've seen Mark Mendelblatt, unfortunately, fall back a little. And we just know that those two have been around each other all day long, and they're just a distance of 3-4 meters away from one another right now.
Well, on the left-hand side of your screen, top left, you are looking at the overall leaderboards. Bruno, you might be interested in this. Because unfortunately your name is in 5th spot with Augie Diaz. You started 3rd this morning, you're on 23 points. Lars Grail, Sam Conchalves started in 4th, and I think they're staying in 4th on 20 points. Moving up the overall leaderboard, the live leaderboard, as we go into the finish of race number 5. Szabo and Natucci have climbed their way up onto the podium. Rohard and Ponceau have done an amazing job in race number 5, going from the 20s now up through the fleet. This performance in race number 5 sees them now just 5 points behind Mendelblatt and Liljedahl over here on the right-hand side of the racetrack. So those are the projected points overall in the Bacardi Cup with a discard. There is Mark Mendelblatt and Magnus Liljedahl looking around. You could just hear how much tension there was on board as they went round the gate.
Okay, you can tell the crews now are no longer hanging overboard. The pressure's a little lighter up here at this end of the course. And Bruno, is that something that usually happens as they're coming up in this area? Does the pressure tend to go down, or is that just a...
I think that these boats are lower. I think that Charlie and John, probably they're hiking hard down in the board. more than those guys. As I said, the left side you have much pressure, and these guys are a little bit on the right side. So.
And we've seen a huge difference in distances between the top two boats that have played the left-hand side of the course. They've got only 23 meters between the two of them, and then the next boat down is 163 meters away from the leader. So that huge distance for the boats who went just a little bit more towards the right-hand side of the course.
Well, a real battle going on yet again between the Frenchman and the American-Swedish duo. Rohard Ponceau battling away with Mendelblatt and Lil Charles, and just one race position could make all the difference at the end of the day after 6 races. Just 3 points overall between those two. They've got each other within their sights, and they are attacking each other. Rohard Ponceau just looking like they've got it an advantage over Mendelblatt and Lil Charles. Szabo and Nattucci in contention, as always, in 4th in this race, in the middle. They're not threatening anybody, they're playing their own game. Vesela and Trinta also in contention in 10th spot. Grail Conchavez to the right of screen. They are just ducking behind de Maison and Lopez. So we'll see how the little battle goes between Rohard Ponceau, Mendelblatt and Lil Charles. That's one battle going on at the moment, and there's another big one going on at the front of the fleet with Buckingham Sperry versus McCausland and Cheer. And I'm not sure, I'm going to ask Paul again, do you think they're going to lay this line? We'll see as we pull out virtually. We'll see if they're going to make that line. We can dial in very quickly with Louis on the water. Louis, with your eyes, with your eyeballs, is Buckingham and Sperry going to cross that line without tacking?
Well, I think it's going to. I think they probably can just shoot the line. Is Bruno still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, hi Bruno. I'll tell you what, I lost a rum and coke yesterday, a Bacardi and coke yesterday. I'll have a Copenhagen with you today that McCausland gets across the line before.
Deal.
Okay,
I say Buckingham and Sperry.
Okay, you're on.
Well, that's good. Well done, Louis. I think you're on the end of another losing bet, because we're looking. Well, you've got the eyeballs nearest. We've got the mathematics and the GPS and the trackers. And right now, Buckingham and Sperry have 25 meters over McCausland and Cheer, and I suspect McCausland and Cheer might have to do attack. I suspect Buckingham and Sperry might be on the ley line to finish. We will see, Kathleen, in the closing moments of race number 5. We are looking at the leaders at the moment. Austin Sperry, Charlie Buckingham, Charlie helming with his trusty crewman, both great laser sailors. And here they come towards the finish of race number 5.
Yeah, it looks a little bit lighter up at the top here, a little bit lumpier. Before you saw the crews were over the side. I think they had a little more speed where they were, but now they're converging at the top of the race course. There's less breeze as the boats get closer. They're getting also closer to the land. You can just see the boat in the chop there, but Charlie's doing a great job of driving.
Well, stand by for some tacking here at this late stage, because it's touch and go. If Buckingham and Sperry can make that line as we just move over virtually, not much in it. McCausland and Cheer definitely are going to have to put a tack in, which puts them on starboard right-of-way tack. But I think Buckingham and Sperry have got enough separation and enough lead, some 25, 28 metres it's showing us on virtual eye. So here we are, Charlie Buckingham coming in towards the finish line. We're going to see these guys do, I think, a little tack. Austin Sperry there, just saying, keep it cool, keep it calm. You know, you don't want to blow it now, but they've almost got this one in the bag. Must be a great feeling for these guys on board.
Well, you can see Charlie is already smiling there. He knows he sailed a great race. They're just crossing their competition.
Seconds from the finish of race number 5. Charlie Buckingham, Austin Sperry putting a final tack into the finish line. There we see the finish line in our shot. Cross the line they go. We've got a few spectator boats out there. There goes the gun. Congratulations to the young Americans, Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry, for a race win in race number 5. They were over the line yesterday, black flagged, and they come back all guns blazing to just take it from McCausland, who had been leading for so much of this race. What a wonderful race number 5 of the Bacardi Cup. And they're going to be happy. McCausland and Cheer are going to be happy with that. A second position, a second in race number 5. That's seen them leap up the overall leaderboard.
Yeah, they've sailed fairly consistently. Obviously, this is the first time we've seen them in the top 3, and that's what you have to get in order to get on the podium in that top 5 positions for trophies at the prize giving. But these guys, Rohan Pranso, they're going for a win. They want to win this event. They've won it before, and they've got to gain distance on Mark Mandelblatt and George Szabo, and that is a tough job.
Well, here into the next big battle on the racetrack. Rohan and Pranso engaging Szabo and Natucci. Mandelblatt in the picture, off the peg, and they're into a little tacking duel. Rohan and Pranso. Here's Szabo and Natucci just about across the line, almost simultaneously. I'm pretty sure that went to the Frenchman, Rohan and Pranso, who clawed their way up from mid-20s at the beginning of the race, battling away, nibbling, taking boat by boat by boat throughout, with a really determined performance at the Bacardi Cup to see them finish in 3rd. Szabo and Natucci, the light air specialists, in 4th position as Mark Mandelblatt and Magnus Liljarl cross the line in 5th, still at the top of the overall leaderboard. And there's De Maison and Lopez from Brazil, your countrymen, Bruno, coming through the line. Good result for your buddies there.
Yeah, Vitor De Maison is a very good sailor. He's a former snipe sailor, and Tutu Lopes is a crew that is learning a lot. He's already sailing Star for 6-7 years, so it's super results. They are over 30 overall, so
cool.
6 they will go up in the boat.
Grail, Lars Grail, Sam Gonçalves. How do you say Gonçalves?
Gonçalves.
Gonçalves, thank you. Gonçalves. Well, another single-digit result for those guys. So all 5 results of Lars Grail and Sam Gonçalves, I'll try it again, I'll keep working on that overnight. 6, 6, 7, 1, and now an 8. So that is impressive on its own.
Okay, we just saw the Swiss cross the line. Dennis Bowe and Bonhoeffer also black flagged in the second race yesterday, so they're going to be really happy to be back here in the top 10. Okay, Luke Lawrence, Ian Coleman, another young American team, another keeper, in 11th place.
Misura Barak from Croatia coming through in the background. Merkelbach and Lambertegui, Melaby and Revkin coming from the right as we look down, of course, Londrigan and Toyama, the Japanese crewman. I haven't met Toyama. Do you know him, Bruno?
Who?
Japanese Toyama crewman.
I know, he's a very nice guy.
Ah, cool.
From San Diego. At least he's living in San Diego these days. Okay, bow 89, Tomas Hornos, former snipe world champion, sailing with Canadian Stuart McIntosh.
And Doug Smith crossing with Brian O'Mahony through the line.
Jen, they're waiting for you.
And bow 46, Hubert Merkelbach, Sergio Lambertegui.
In 17th in the race. It's a real shame, actually, for the German-Italian duo, because on the first downwind, they were in 2nd position and had done a phenomenal upwind job, got themselves into 2nd spot. Then they got flagged by the umpires, most likely for body movements or any kind of rocking. We can't confirm that, but that's our suspicion. And so that's kind of thrown them off kilter and lost them a few places to finish in 17th. Shame for the good Dr. Hubert Merkelbach. Now approaching the line, Serge Pulfer and JP Chatagny. just behind Zanetti and Mark Struby.
Okay, and we saw in 16th place Ivan Melleby and Josh Revkin. Not a stunning day for that team. They came into today in about 5th place. They were posting a 3, 13, 5, and a 10, and now they're going to have to keep this. Well, they're going to have to keep that 10th place, which I'm sure they would have rather have gotten rid of. But that definitely will move them down in the overall standings.
Okay, so the mid-fleeters coming through. The guys who we were talking about earlier, who, you know, the battle is to finish in the top half of the fleet as opposed to the bottom half of the fleet. And as you say, Kathleen, tough racing in amongst that bunch.
Yeah, you can see it all the mark around because it's so crowded. There's no clean air. You can't often control what you want to do, choose when you want to attack. The boats in front of you dictate it. So when you get back there, you have to struggle really hard just to beat 1 or 2 more boats. And I think these guys are going to be tired. We're already on day 5 of the regatta. Some people arrived a couple days early. It was windy, and it's just a lot of waiting around these last 2 days in the hot sun in Miami. And while we're all glad to be here in Miami, it does take its toll. And these, as we said, are very long races, and they're going to be really happy when they get to the hoist and have a nice Bacardi cocktail in their hands.
Happy days are here again. It's Buckingham Senior, Charlie's dad, just about to cross. There's Anosov and Caesar. They've been doing very well in this regatta so far, but this is not such a great finish for them.
Yeah, they came in today in around 10th place. They got a 4th place in the second race. They've been sailing fairly consistently, and definitely this is not where they've been.
Well, I'm going to say a quick farewell to Bruno. You've got business to attend to. Thank you very much for stepping into the US Sailing Centre and chipping into our commentary at this stage. Cheers, Bruno. Good luck tomorrow. So that is the great Bruno Prada on his way back towards the boat park. Perhaps he's going to have a word or two with the race committee and try and figure out exactly what happened there on the start line to be black flagged. But really, we could see from his whole body language, not happy at all about that.
Yeah, they've been having such a great regatta, and often I think Augie's been conservative with his starts. We definitely saw him pretty far down on that pin on the line, and we, to our eyes, with the trackers, it looked like they might have been over, but it's so hard to tell. And who knows what the person clawing the line from that end saw. Sometimes it's just a wave that pushes your bow over the line.
Okay, well, I know that we are trying to jump aboard with Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry. I think it'd be rather cool, Chris, just before we do that, to get a feel for the overall points standings. We can calculate as the boats cross the line. Let's get a feel for the overall leaderboard and how things stand at the moment. Well, Mendelblatt and Liljal started today in top spot, but now their lead has been reduced ever so slightly by 1 point. They are now 2 points adrift, ahead, I beg your pardon, it's been a long day. They're 2 points ahead of Rohart and Ponso with 15 points overall. Szabo and Natucci have climbed up into podium position into third on 18 points. Grail and Gonçalves on 20 points. Diaz Prada with that black flag. Look at there, the BFD, black flagged. That is not what they want to see on their scoreline, because previously 11th was their worst result, and I think that's damaged their prospects of winning this trophy significantly. Buckingham and Sperry, what a wonderful race win for these guys. Charlie Buckingham, Austin Sperry started down out of the top 10. Now they're in 6th overall on 25 points, just ahead of McCausland and Cheer on 28 points. Melleby and Revkin, 31 points. Doyle in Feliz in 9th, 36 points. Lawrence and Coleman, top 10 with 41. So just before we leave that, the top of the leaderboard, the top 4, there are 7 points between 1st and 4th, just 2 points between the top 2. So it's wide open, I would say, Kathleen, going into the 6th and final race tomorrow. We are going to be following Mendelblatt, Leal-Charles, Rohart, Ponceau, Zabo and Natucci, and Grail and Conchalves, and Diaz and Prada. That top 5, just 10 points between them. There's a big fleet, 72 points, 72 boats. Really a bad result by any of these guys could see them out of the top 3. But at the moment, Mendelblatt and Leal-Charles, slim margin, 2 points ahead of the Frenchman.
Yes, looking at the leaderboard there, you see quite a few DNFs, BFD. These racers can't afford to have a bad race tomorrow.
Okay, well, we know that Jenny Tulloch is now on board with Charlie Buckingham and Austin Sperry, and we'll get them in vision. Well done, chaps. Jenny, give us a wave if you can see us. Good work. Congratulations to the guys. I know they were gutted yesterday, but they've made good today. Over to you, Jen.
Yeah, huge congratulations to these guys. Absolutely a fabulous race. I'm just laughing that Charlie is stuffing his mouth as we're mid-interview. He's like, can I have that Cliff Bar? They're clearly needing to rehydrate and refood after that. But I'll let you finish that. We'll start off with Austin. Talk to us about how you were able, I mean, it looked at points like John McCausland was going to take that race, that they had a good enough solid lead, and then all of a sudden, clawing back at the end. What happened?
Yeah, he's going real well. We made a little gain on the bottom of that downwind run, staying on starboard longer. I think we got a little more pressure down there at the end. Had a good mark rounding and stayed on his stern, good height. Maybe kind of worked off a boat length there, and he tacked, and we kept digging in on the left. The course, the wind went left 10 on that last beat. So we thought we'll just, leg it out there. We were pretty far ahead of the next guys. And the left was just good. And, Charlie had this thing ripping today. We were just fast. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Hi, Mom.
What about your wife and the kid? No, just Mom. Okay.
Hi,
Dad. I love it. All right, so what were you doing differently today that had this thing ripping?
Austin set the boat up, so it's all him. I was just holding the tiller. No, I think the boat's really set up well for the conditions. We felt pretty confident in our speed all week, upwind. We had really good height today. We got off the line clean, and we're able to have clean lanes the whole time and just keep the boat moving. So that's pretty much it.
You said that you got a 10-degree lifty. I mean, it definitely looked, from sitting on top of that camera boat, you could see the angle of your boat, and John McCausland was almost even 15 degrees maybe at the top of that. I thought maybe you guys were in height mode. You're going to lay the finish line, and they were going for speed mode. Do you think anything like that, or was it just you had a little lefty?
Look, we're pointing really well in the setup that we have right now. So even off the line, we're able to hold a very tight lane and clean up aisle 9 above us. And it was the same there. The boat just feels really good.
I think it was a little bit of both. I think we wanted to get left of him if we were going to have any chance to pass him. And he was covering us, but always leading right. And I think we were able to gain every time we tacked back toward the left. And our height didn't help either. Our height didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt.
Yeah.
That was
didn't
such
hurt.
a safe answer. You're smoking fast, dude. I mean,
Oh, they sound so happy. It's fabulous. So we heard today from Luca Modena this morning that perhaps today would be the one day that the right would pay, that the sea breeze would come in, that it might shift right, and we're all thinking, I don't know, it's Biscayne Bay. They call it the old man's highway. Do you know what that's referring to?
Yeah, it's referring to Augie's dad, Gonzalo, the legend of Biscayne Bay. And we actually had that conversation at 5 minutes, and we were thinking the same might happen, and just my instincts were telling me that the left was going to be good. Augie was down there, Luke Lawrence was down there, Mark Mendelblatt was down there. A lot of the top guys were, so we just shifted our plan and went to the pin.
Okay, well, it worked. Huge congratulations, you guys, both Olympians, yourself and the Star, you and the Laser. I know it's only your second Star regatta, but very well done to take home a win, and let's hope you get to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jenny.
Cheers, you guys.
Jenny, just before you go, and while we still have you,
we might not be done. Digby's asking a question.
I have one request, which is that we've been doing these race analysis pieces with the winners, and I wonder if you would ask Charlie if he would jump into the US Sailing Center a little bit later when he's had a bite to eat and help us with a 5-minute race analysis.
When he finishes this Cliff Bar. Digby, no, it's fine. It's a one-word answer, and you have to say yes, so there's not really another option. Digby wants to know, we've been doing this race analysis piece with the winner of each race, so that if you could step into the studio with Digby once you guys get to the dock and get
showered, dressed. Exactly. The answer is yes. Austin said it for you.
Charlie will be happy to.
Yes.
Maybe Austin will come and watch as well. There you go, Jigby.
Thanks, Jen. And I thought, why not? Let's get it on record. Get him in. No excuse for running off.
We heard it here first.
Yeah. And I like the way Jen put that. So, well, cool race number 5. It's all to play for in the Bacardi Cup. We have one more race tomorrow coming up. It's scheduled to start at the same time, midday local time. We don't know what the weather is going to do, but Luca is telling us that he thinks the race is going to get away and that we'll have that same thermic condition with very light breeze in the morning. So perhaps there's a postponement ashore, who knows. But do tune in tomorrow. Come and see the final and deciding race of the Bacardi Cup, race number 6. Kathleen, it's been good fun today. It's been a long day. I have to confess, I got a little bit muddled at the end of it because your brain gets a little bit fried. But it's been a very, very cool day.
Right is starboard, Diggy.
Yeah.
And left is port.
Okay. But we are going to see the deciding race. Just 2 points between the top 2 teams. And it could go either way, really. There's kind of nothing in it between the top 3, perhaps.
Yeah, just 2-point separation between these boats. But listen, Mendelblad and Rohart have been here before, gone into really important races. We just saw this in Nassau in the finals, and they know how to handle it. But they also know that guys like Lars Grail, Augie Diaz, Charlie Buckingham are going to be in the mix, and that's what they need to do. They have to get points between them and the second-place boat. And so we do have great sailors up there, and you can see it's very easy for them to get a 10th place finish. Almost everybody there has a finish that's below 10th place. So that could happen, but it can't happen tomorrow.
Keep your eyes peeled on the Facebook page and the starsailors.com page. We are going to upload all these race analysis pieces separately, and I know that 2 of them are already on Facebook. Will is doing an amazing job for SSL, putting all these little clips and moments onto the Facebook. But I have to say I've really enjoyed, from Xavier Rohart, from Lars Grail, using Virtual Eye, this powerful tool, to analyze the races as they come off the water. And we'll see tomorrow a little bit of Charlie analyzing that race and how they managed to win race number 5.
They just had great boat speed.
They had great boat speed. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you very much for watching from around the world, and do join us again. Come in tomorrow at the same time, around 11:45 local time, Miami time, for the decider of the Bacardi Cup.